Brock is another player that's starting to get recognized now on Ghost.
Yeah.
And that guy he's been
Insane.
solid for a long time. I actually coached him in Kuala Lumpur back in 2021 at some point. Brock is definitely one of the best Sovas I've definitely ever coached, for sure.
You just turn from a wee into a weeb. That said, let's go ahead and talk about VCT.
That, but all right.
What is up, my friends? Welcome to another episode of Valoranting, and a show where we professionally rant. We ran so much that I don't even know what episode we're at. Apparently, we were at 104 last week, and I said it was 103. But if I'm looking at my sticky note, if I could share my screen, it actually said 103. But we are at episode 105. So we're skipping up a week. We doubled up last week. We're skipping up this week. But we still have the same people. So Anderzz is back. Anderzz, how are you doing today?
Doing great, man. Happy to be back. You know, staying busy.
Yeah.
Excited about the end of both of the main region seasons. So,
holy crap, man! You seem like you have like some great fucking headphones. Like how crispy is Celine Dion's voice when you're actually listening to this music?
Oh, it's impeccable. Truly superb. Yeah, you'll have to come down from Montreal sometime and try them out.
I'm down. And of course, my partner in crime for today, of course, because Uber is not here, so I'm gonna have to replace him with Mitchman. Mitchman, how are you doing today?
Yeah, good. I've just got some in-ears. I feel like I'm kind of underdressed right now, but we'll get there. I'll pull out my studio headphones in a bit, and we'll be rocking it together. Yeah, no, I'm feeling good. It's a good day. Been a chill week of fun, very fun, very meaningful games in EMEA. So oh wow, what a week.
You know what? Actually, if you're looking at the three boxes, we have like great advertisement for all types of headphones that you want. So we got in-ears if you want to have like your LAN experience. Then we have the wireless if you want to move around, take a piss, get some water while you're listening to your stream. Or then you got Anderzz if you want to pay
the absolute chungus. Yeah.
Hit us with the name again. What's the name of these headphones?
They're in Odyssey LCDX. Yeah.
I thought I was the one that spoke French. But yeah, we had good games for sure for the VCTs, of course, in EMEA and NA, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Of course, we never have time to talk about any other regions, but Mitchman talked about some games that were like really meaningful in EMEA as a joke. We had some very meaningful games, of course, some bangers that we're going to talk about through today with our special guests, not only with Anderzz but also Preston, aka Juv3nile of TSM, and of course, after talking about NA, we might have a guest or we might not. We might have a two-boxer where Mitchman and I are just going to hang out and talk about the EMEA matches, and we'll have a preview actually of discussions talking about the playoffs for both of the regions before we head into the playoffs this weekend. So very, very simple show, very straightforward as the past 5 weeks have been, and that is going to be that. So let's get right into it and introduce our guest, Preston. Welcome back, my man. Hopefully you've been doing good.
Yeah, I've been real good, man. Thank you, Vincent.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about in the green room before we actually went live about doing watch parties and stuff like that for Koreas and all. Have you been watching any other regions or just sticking around with TSM getting, figuring stuff out with the Phoenix? I wanted to be nice there.
Yeah. I saw other regions are running Phoenix these days, so I figured I'd give it a shot. No, I've actually been watching a little bit EMEA in the early mornings and whatnot, and
nice.
Yeah, that region's always really fun to watch.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely get to that after the break. But before that, of course, we're going to talk about the NA VCTs. Let's have a look at the results that we've gotten over the past weekend. And really, we talk about important games. I think, of course, the biggest one is the NRG and the Guard. But I think we had some pretty hype matches with the 100 Thieves Ghost and the OG and LG. Anderzz, what's your take on what you see so far on the screen? Anything else that actually caught your eye, or that was pretty much it?
Honestly, the highlight of the week for me was the 100 Thieves Ghost game.
Yeah.
I mean, both of those teams, at least in my eyes, have been sort of those implemented a ton of structure, are sort of redefining everyone's perceptions of them, but for very different reasons. Ghost obviously has never really put up like that incredible result, but they're making this insane run this season. 100 Thieves completely reset from zero, has now risen to almost the entire top of the region potentially. And it's just a face-off between those two. It's like a runoff against these new guns that are sort of in a head-to-head.
Yeah.
And to see the Ghost guys come out on top is pretty exciting. I think that they've been doing incredible stuff, and going into the main event now with them being at top seed feels a little bit like it's the way things should be.
It kind of sucks because now we're living off a hype of like the rise of EG, TSM looking good, 100 Thieves is on the rise as well. Ghost, of course, on a super rise, and then everybody just forgets about XSET, who's just chilling there. And probably
XSET
has,
and
like,
OpTic, yeah.
I was gonna say, right? They probably have like the best chances to even qualify for Masters, and here we are just talking about the underdogs all the time.
Like, Ghost,
Just
100 Thieves.
Exactly, it's been hyped.
World champions? Nah.
but let's talk about that actually, because we talk about a team that's been on the rise. One of them being Evil Geniuses. They face up against FaZe, where FaZe hasn't had the best start. They lost in the first week against OpTic. Then they lost against LG, and then it felt like it was going to be like the good old FaZe where, brand new roster, Flya coming in. It wasn't going to look too well after they replaced Poach with Flya. But here we go. We have Baby Bay playing some Chamber here and there, but most of the times pulling out like the Neon out of the main compositions that they have on other maps outside of Icebox. But focusing on Icebox, Preston, because this is also a map where EG has been looking very, very good. Of course, I remember the infamous 2K wall bang there through the tube into upper B, and EG probably has like the upper hand on this map against FaZe. But FaZe had a really good start on a 9-3 half.
Yeah, actually, if you remember when we played against them in the qualifier on Ascent, that was supposed to be our map, right?
Yeah.
And they're the one team where, honestly, in my entire career, even as a player, where I truly felt like I was countered. Like they countered what we did. And I remember Corey saying that Baby Bay was talking about how their staff did like an amazing job of doing a rundown of what we did and stuff like that, and made it super simple for them to counter. And so I think maybe that's probably one of FaZe's strengths currently, is being able to see what you do and sort of come up with a plan and a direct counter to what you're doing. And so it sort of felt like that's sort of what happened. And then on top of that, anytime Dicey and Baby Bay are playing like they are, like,
Yeah.
dude, they're nearly unbeatable. Like there's a world where FaZe could qualify for champions or for Masters this year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Agreed.
if Dicey and Baby Bay have a hot streak for a few days, that's like all it takes,
Yeah, and the good part about this game too, going into 24 rounds, is everybody pretty much stepped up to the plate too. Where Baby Bay is like an all-star player for this roster, but he's been at the bottom, right? It's been Flya that had some great rounds. Dicey also, like, 4 other players dropping 20 kills at the minimum, at the very least. But when we're looking at this head-to-head on this map, Anderzz, what's your take about the almost mirror match between these two compositions? Where for FaZe we have KO, and then for EG we have a Sage. What's the pros and cons of looking at this matchup, and who do you think displayed that a little bit better?
So it's kind of interesting, because if you were to ask me, nameplates removed, which team was playing which comps, I would have gambled that FaZe was playing the one with the Chamber and the Jet. It just seems to like fit their Smeeg, like all out, we're just gonna fish for kills type of approach to the game. That said, I think that the KO that FaZe brought to the table sort of, in a lot of ways, it does lend itself better to that Smeegy style. Like they have a lot more ability to be hyper proactive. I mean, if you're looking at a Chamber, it's not going to present obviously the same dive first duel sort of seeking opportunities that a Jet otherwise would, and so they had to integrate something into their composition that made that opportunity exist. And so bringing that in was super good for them, and I think it was kind of a crux in beating EG's overarching strategy. I mean, we can talk about like how they had these crazy wall bangs and stuff, but a large amount of their composition success and failure is born out of their post plants. It's they get sites really effectively, but it's like, do they have the snakebite lineups? Do they have these spam positions? And if you're going to bring a KO to the table where you can completely lock out the lineup portion of that equation, it makes things a lot easier to head off at the pass.
And even with the new comps that they've been pulling out and trying to work out their main compositions on different maps, like you see Poise and Baby Bay both at Chambers, but Poise, it depends on the map here and there of what they're going to play, but overall, when they actually started introducing the Neon into the majority of their maps, they've also been having a steady increase of results out of the defender halves. So 9-3 on one half, then you look at the second map here, which is going to be on Breeze. And when you look at the second map on Breeze against EG, I don't necessarily think that it was like, oh, trap plays here and there. Like we were joking around thinking that Baby Bay was basically playing Apex Legends, of like trying to jump around, grab a spike, and dash away on mid side when they drop the spike. But it seems like EG, Preston, had no answer whatsoever on their attacker half against FaZe.
Yeah, I mean, FaZe ran a pretty unique comp with Neon, and that's not something very many teams in NA run. Like even
Hmm.
still to this day, I think most teams prefer either running Jet or no duelist for the most part. So, just playing against a Neon is definitely a different look, and playing against Baby Bay, like when he's feeling himself on that character, like it just feels so oppressive. Like he feels like he's everywhere at once. And somehow, specifically on that map, so the way Baby Bay likes playing is he feels like he's always behind you. He's always directly
Hmm.
behind you. He knows what he's gonna do. He sees his holes and he takes his openings quick on defense. And so he flanks quite a bit and he rotates very often quickly.
Yeah.
And so when he has a good read in the game and he's feeling himself like that, he's pretty much always gonna be behind you, like
Yep.
as you're executing, and it's just like so surprising and oppressive, and it feels like there's almost like nothing you can do, and it's just a
Hmm.
constant annoyance on the map. And he's very very good at making a presence in that way. And I think Neon on that map in particular is lends very very well to his playstyle.
Yeah, because he was able to do that as even a Jet before, right? And I've been praising
Yep.
Baby Bay of like he's not the one that's like fragging first most of the time when they were playing in a composition where Baby Bay was jetting and you had Dicey as a chamber, because Dicey was actually the one that was getting most first bloods. Then I had the conversation with Sideshow, and Sideshow was like, well, actually, if you're looking at Baby Bay's stats right now as a Neon, he's actually getting more and more of these first bloods too. So it really fits back into like the Schmeek meme that we're talking about here for Baby Bay, which is quite nice. But to bounce the question back over to you here, Anderzz, you were just like, oh, because we just talked about like the
Yeah.
defensive comps and everything, and I'm assuming you want to talk about a little bit about the Neon or just FaZe overall on defense.
Yeah, it's FaZe overall because
Mm-hmm.
we've seen sort of these charts come out on Twitter over the last couple of weeks of like that grid that people have of
Mm-hmm.
what teams were most attacking sided, what teams were most defensive sided.
Yeah,
And I
yeah, yeah,
remember
yeah,
it's something sticking out in my mind. I forget who mentioned it, but they were shocked because FaZe was very acutely on the defensive side of
yeah,
that sort of equilibrium. And it's
yeah.
like, oh, that's somewhat counterintuitive. We always think of FaZe, we're like, oh, they're this Schmeeg memers, like they're gonna hold W, they must be attacker sided. I think it's the exact opposite, and I think Preston, you just made an incredibly prescient point about why that is. I
Mm-hmm.
think Baby Bay, like the Schmeeg doesn't have to be something that's implicitly attacker sided. The fact that he is so good at finding openings on their defense and being ultra proactive makes complete sense and sort of explains why they're a defensive sided team, at least in recent history, despite having something that sort of archetypically would be associated with an offensive team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's I think when we're talking about that quadrant, I just linked it to you, Daniel and Ian, on Discord. If you guys want to pull that up, it's from Weltis, of course, that's been working in the background with NSG and Riot, mostly NSG, on like helping us casters develop like the storylines and stuff like that, getting into like the analytical route. But if you're looking at that quadrant, basically, you're looking at on the x-axis how well you're winning on the attacker rounds, and then of course on the y-axis, which is the bottom to the top, is your defender half. So anybody that's in the top right here, as you could see, are the teams that are very consistent and potentially are almost clear favorites to make it to Masters, with of course the exception of OpTic, who's been looking very very strong on most of their defender rounds overall, right? So it's nice to see this, and then you see FaZe is like, okay, well maybe their attack's not the best, but they're climbing up and up in the past 5 weeks in terms of their defender half. So if you're not really good with numbers and you want to try to like look at that from like a first glance, and you're very how do I say this, like you need a picture to understand the image, then, or to understand the scenario, then at least that helps you a little bit there. So big shout out to Weltis on all these storylines and stats that he's been putting on before we have like these week matches in the week. But yeah, so eventually with that, no answer going in here for EG on the second half. So it was not a single attack around, was one on Breeze, 2-0, easy for FaZe. Now we get into the next match where, we'll laugh about it a little bit, but I actually want to ask the question first because it's prefacing the TSM matchup, right? So the TSM versus XSET, very important game for XSET because that's a match that if they win, they have a chance to make it into the first seed of their group. And then for TSM, for me, the way that I saw it here, Preston, was, okay, well, the chances of making out of playoffs is, very, very slim, if not doesn't exist at all. And then what would be important was thinking about what's next for TSM. So you kind of want to still come out all guns blazing and make sure that you have a good setup in the series. So what was your mentality as a coach and for the team going into this head-to-head, Juv3nile?
Yeah, so I mean, we went into the match knowing that we weren't going to be in playoffs. It was 100% statistically impossible for us to be in playoffs, and so that's
Yeah.
obviously already tough. Just on player mentality and stuff like going into it.
Mhm.
And then there were some things that the players had wanted to try throughout the season, some different role swaps. So originally, when I came into the team, we had actually talked about Sabrosa possibly being duelist because one of the big issues, and it's sort of even a thing no matter what role Sabrosa plays at this point, because especially when he's in game leading, he reads the game faster than his teammates do, right? When
Mhm.
you're the in game leader, you're seeing the game and so if the players aren't reacting fast enough to what he's saying, he ends up taking the lead. And so like our scaling has been an issue all season where like Sabrosa's the first one in.
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
not, you shouldn't be the first one in as an Astra and you shouldn't be the first one in even as a Sky. But that was continually happening. And so one of the early ideas that I had when I very first came on team was trying Sabrosa at Duelist.
Mhm.
And I don't know if anyone actually even knows this, really, because we didn't really talk about it
Mhm.
but Sabrosa had um, for the past 2 weeks. So it started before the match against, I guess Ghost. Like a day or two before, he had huge like mouth pain, teeth pain, and I
Mm.
guess he ended up going to a dentist in Texas. And obviously, he's not from the U.S. He's from Canada,
Yeah.
so he has no insurance or anything. But basically, it was his molars growing in, either growing in or he needed surgery. And I think he ended up needing surgery because it hasn't gone away yet. So
Mm.
he's gonna have to fly back to Canada and get surgery. But either way, he was not calling for the last 2 matches. GMD was actually full IGL for the last 2 matches because Sabrosa couldn't really talk.
Oh shit.
Um,
Oh
yeah, so
wow.
he was able to make like minimal calls, but he couldn't have like full out talking like the entire half, and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And
Mhm.
so GMD was actually the IGL for the last 2, and Sabrosa was just filling in when he could and when he felt like he could actually talk enough.
I see.
And so that was a little bit of a switch we had. And so because he wasn't in game leading, we thought maybe we could try him on duelist a little bit. A He'd been wanting to try duelist, and B it gave other players a little bit of ability to move to something they wanted to try. I think Seven wanted to play flex, which he did most of the week. Match he ended up
Mhm.
playing jet, but yeah, so it was definitely a tough week of practice for us overall. On top of that, on top of all those different things, and I feel like we practiced well for the week. In the match against XSET, actually on Haven, we ended up running Jet Phoenix, but the entire week we're actually running solo duelist um, with Phoenix, and I thought it was actually really really good throughout the entire week.
Mhm.
And then in the match, obviously you guys saw on Split that Seven ended up dropping like, I don't know, 22 or something on Jet, and he's like, "I'm feeling myself on Jet. Let me just play Jet." And I was like, "Hey,
Yeah.
dude, if you're feeling yourself, go ahead, because we're gonna need a little bit of help to beat XSET on Haven, just because we definitely didn't have a
Yeah.
perfect week or whatever."
For sure. So then Sabrosa having these extra teeth growing out is usually the wisdom teeth, right? So I
Yeah,
guess
yeah, yeah,
that's
his
why
wisdom.
he had to transfer that wisdom over to GMD so that GMD could call. I love that I could actually host this show because I get to continue with my dad jokes. So let's keep having Uber not be able to make it so I can continue to replace him and continue with these dad jokes. But
Well, you should get
nonetheless,
one of those. What were those cans that he like had a meltdown when he said Australian people don't drink them? You should
oh
get one
the
of those and
Foster's
chug
beer.
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Be like, this one's for you, Uber.
Yeah, and
See
then
you
just do a
soon.
shoey.
Yeah.
I'll do
Oh,
a shoey
shoey with
Foster's.
one of those, and make sure he can see you pouring the can in the shoe. Oh,
Oh,
Vance,
yeah.
we've hit a great idea.
I'll get a
Nobody
pint.
send this to him. Let's surprise him next week.
Hell yeah! But as we as we had the B-roll of this TSM and XSET matchup, I think overall though it's a very similar storyline. Even though it kind of looked like it was kind of trolly that Sabrosa was coming out with the Phoenix on this map, he still put up some good numbers overall. And I think that TSM had great starts in the series. Like I know we skipped the first map, or we skimmed the first map for a bit, but GMD actually started off the pistol round on Split with a fucking ace. Now we get into this one here for TSM where, they're putting up good numbers on XSET's very, very far lead in the very beginning, right? It got to a point where it's like, I think 10-5, 11-6, some shit like that. A timeout gets called by Preston, or no, sorry, a timeout gets called by XSET, and it's converted by TSM for them to make it to like almost 11-9, and then it's over by then because you're trailing by so far behind. So first off, I'm gonna ask a question here to Anderzz, and then I'll go over to you and Juv3nile because I see you're like, oh fuck. So we'll go through like the going back the and rolling back the days on those. So what's your look on XSET so far, Anderzz? Because me looking at XSET in this series was like, okay, this is a great chance as well for XSET to show and prove that they are a real contender to make it to Masters, right? Because they've always been consistently number 4, number 3. They want to be at the top, and it looked very good when they were having such a big lead. But TSM was always able to come back at some point where a timeout was forced, and XSET was a little bit more complacent on trying to close out the map and even the series.
I don't know if this is just me, and this is like purely a personal perception thing. I'm typically like a hyperlogical person, but I don't know what it is about XSET at this point. But every single time I watch them, I'm like, wow, that's not just a good team, that's a great team, but I still don't think they're good enough. And I think honestly what it boils down to for me is at the end of the day, it feels like they don't have the X factor that pushes them over the top like the other top teams do. You look at them and you're like, okay, Zekken's a total star player, Cryo is an absolute pop-off player, and yet when I watch them play their matches, how often do you have a round where you're like, holy shit, they just completely shut that down? They don't have those massive momentum swings that I feel like every other top roster does.
I feel that Rory's finding himself a little bit, though, in these situations, too, where, you know, sometimes when you need that extra third person, that's going to help carry the weight a little bit. I almost feel like we're watching 100 Thieves in like 2020, where if it's not like Asuna and Dicey that could kill, then you need the supporting cast to do something. Then you got the old man Rory, just like the old man Hiko, playing Initiator, trying to switch it over right now and turn around over back in favor of XSET so they could have these clutch moments. But I think that there's a little bit of building that's starting to work out for XSET, but I agree with you, Anderzz. There's still a missing piece that shows that consistency, or that consistency that we need from XSET to prove to us that they're a contender. But to get back on that, we're talking about that timeout that was needed there by XSET for them to try to close it out. So, Preston, what was going on through the conversations when you guys were starting to come back in the game?
No, yeah. I was just gonna say, I mean, it's sort of indicative to our entire season, right? Like we lost both maps. I don't know if anyone really noticed, but we lost both maps on a Thrifty.
Yeah.
And so that's really indicative to our entire season, because if we win that Thrifty, it's 12-10. We win the one gun round, and it's 12-11, and they're broke for the last round. They're going into the last round 12-12.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like if all we have to do is like, we've said this, and the reason it's so frustrating is because we've said this entire season. We just need to clean up small stuff like that. Like the amount of Thrifties that we lost this season is honestly disgusting. It is completely disgusting. And then as far as like XSET goes themselves and the issues they have, like I sort of agree with you. Like Death played out of his mind in this match, and I feel like he's been pretty solid all the time. But I don't know if you could rely on that against the top teams.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if he's gonna be able to go +6, +7 both maps against fucking OpTic. You know what I mean? So he definitely is really good. He's obviously a great in-game leader, and I think they are missing just like that one more person to consistently be like, if they had one more fragger, right? I think they would definitely be one of the best teams in NA by far, and they already are, right? So
Yeah.
I think Cryo was a chance for them to be a huge difference maker, and I feel like he's been obviously insane for them, but for some reason it didn't make them as good as it should have, you know? Like honestly, that's really how it feels.
Yeah. No, I get it. I think at the same time, there's still a team that oozes a lot of confidence, and it shows in their post-game interviews, and I think they definitely have what it takes with the flash in the pan. But for that consistency, I think they need more of those reps to be like, okay, we're finally at 12 and like fucking 5. Let's just take it round by round and then really try to close it out. Because when you're at those situations where you need a timeout to just try to win games, you're just being a little bit too complacent, and you want to think about that finish line a little bit too much, and it seems to pull you back in the end. So hopefully they'll find a way to like fix that out here for XSET going into the playoffs right now, because technically, we'll have a look at it later, they have a really good opportunity to represent North America in the brackets, looking at the playoffs, depending on what side of the bracket and how you see the games, what fans you are, right? So good luck to XSET going into the playoffs. Coming up next as well is talking about Ghost and 100 Thieves. So match of the week, pretty much outside of that Energy and the Guard. I think the Energy and the Guard holds a little bit more weight because it was whoever won that one qualified. But I think it was also a nice little battle between Ghost and 100 Thieves to see if 100 Thieves could actually make it to the top seed as well if 100 Thieves actually won that series. So we get into the series, Anders. This was something that you were mostly looking up and looking forward to. So what were the storylines that you're looking at before we actually were able to witness the match?
So, I mean, I think that the reason that this was my match of the week is brutal honesty. I don't care that much about people who are fighting for playoff spots. I just care about the people who are playing the best Valorant at any given time. And
yeah.
I think that this was the best match that was played this week. I think that from a raw performance, like best Valorant being played by both teams that were in the lobby, this was the best match that we had access to. And that said, that was my perception going in. A couple of rounds in the first match, I wasn't sure that that was what we were actually going to get. After seeing the map pick ban, I was a little bit shocked to see what got through the pool. And then when the first map sort of started rolling through and Nismo wasn't really engaged the way that I expected him to be on Breeze, started panicking a little bit. I'm a little bit of a Ghost fanboy. Got to support Kaplan, my fellow mainer. But once Nismo came online, I mean, it's basically lights out from there. I think both teams, both of those teams, like the reason I was looking forward to the match is they have such incredible systems in place for their lineups that for someone that's looking at it from like a complex systems analysis perspective, every single action has a protocol built in. There's never an instance with these teams where you're like, oh, they had to audible their reaction to that. It just doesn't happen. Like they already know what they're supposed to be doing at all times, and it makes the games look so fluid. That's why I enjoy watching them so much.
I think that's a great indication as well as to like that matchup on Breeze about the protocols that you were just mentioning, Anders, because let's actually have a look at that clip of how 100 Thieves are able to play the retakes onto A site. Like just trying to play post plant for 100 Thieves when they're supposed to be the team that's more attacker heavy based on the stats in the grass, like the small things that are coming out, like a cage so that we could come up towards the mid side, mollies towards the pyramids to push them back. And if you're looking at how you're closing in and inching in from 100 Thieves from the blue dots into the map versus where the ghosts are going to be on a post plan, they've pushed everybody out towards the A cave every single time, not allowing anybody from ghost also being able to go for late lurks towards mid. So just the protocols of 100 Thieves playing on a defense when they're supposed to be more attacker heavy gave me an indication that, holy shit, this is going to be a big back and forth battle between 100 Thieves and ghost. But unfortunately, once we got into the defender side of this map, I'm starting to see that for Ghosts, it's not only about how good they are on their retake plays, but just how good they are defensively, period. I don't know if you saw the same thing looking at this matchup on Breeze to start things off, Preston.
Yeah, I mean, Ghost is obviously crazy good, and they're actually one of the core that have been together, honestly, probably the longest at this point out of the teams they're definitely playing against in VCT. Obviously, Aproto's a little bit of a new pick, but John QT and the rest of them have been around for a while. And when they made the switch to John QT calling, it definitely made a huge difference for them. And this match in particular, their defense has always been really, really, really good on that map. They have a really good understanding. And Nismo, sort of how I was telling you how Baby Bay has that similar like you can feel him in the server. It's sort of the same thing on Nismo, especially when he's feeling himself on KO.
He's been feeling himself all month, man.
Yeah. And he feels like he's everywhere at once. You know what I mean? And that's something that he does really, really well. And I think that's been the biggest difference for them. And the biggest change for them is just, how godlike he's been playing. And the question is, can he keep that up? And I mean, he's kept it up for a long time now. And on top of that, Brock is another player that's starting to get recognized now on Ghost. And that guy he's been
insane.
Solid for a long time. I actually coached him in Kuala Lumpur back in, way back in 2021 at some point probably. And so it's great to see and see these players improve and come up and finally get some of their due, because Brock is definitely one of the best Sovas I've definitely ever coached for sure.
Yeah, and this, especially like the clutch potential that Brock currently has in these situations. I think last week and the week before, like on Haven, on Icebox, there were really good moments where he was just able to win it on like 2v1s and 3v1s. That was like, oh shit, we're putting Brock on the map, and then Ghost is starting to look even more and more complete, where really it's not, there is part of it, like the protocol that Kaplan is able to build with his team as a whole to have that synergy, but the pop-off potential across the board of this team is actually quite high. I really like looking at these two teams too, because aside from potential maybe Asuna, you're looking at this roster and it's like there's no all-star big salary quote-unquote players that you currently have that has like all these highlight reels until you're actually witnessing these two teams play, and it's like, holy shit, who's Nismo? Who's Brock? Who's John Cutie? How does he win a 4 versus 1 against TSM? Sorry, Preston, again. And then, like, how does Will pop off? How is Bang getting a fucking ace on a 5v1 on the next map on fucking on Icebox, right? So there's been some crazy moments. Actually, no, was it a 5v1 on this map? It was an ace that he got on this map on B site. Yeah. It's pretty insane how he's able to move around and be a great addition to the whole 100 Thieves roster, but. Yeah, it came down to the wire last round, but again, for me, I wasn't really sweating bullets because Ghosts were able to play the defender half on that first map. But Icebox is a different story. I think Icebox at this point, it's like, okay, 100 Thieves. Funny enough, like Mike's fucking hates playing ranked on Icebox, yet he's the one that cooks up the most shit with Envy and now with 100 Thieves on this map, right? So quite ironic. But they've had some great results for 100 Thieves on this map before, but the story overall was written differently once Ghost stepped into the server on this map here, Anderzz.
This match, or this map in particular, really stood out to me because going into it, I hate Ghost's comp. I think that KO is actually really, really bad on this map, and there's a lot of numbers to support that.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see Ghost convert rounds the way that they did, it required something that went beyond just like compositional superiority.
Mm-hmm.
The way that they controlled the map, and again, going to their protocols, the way that like knowing whether or not they needed to flank on specific rounds based off of the post plans that they expected from 100 Thieves, like everything was impeccable. It
Mm-hmm.
was... you can almost look at it in the context if you wanted to use my lens of, okay, Ghost has the worst comp out of these two, and they're still going to surmount that and come out on top by a fairly meaningful margin. Like, they played the map so well just from a macro perspective that it was excellent.
Yeah. It definitely looked really good. I think Ghosts at this point, or even 100 Thieves, they keep having to go back to like the drawing board where they're meeting a team for the first time in like open qualifiers or during the group stages, but they always come back with a vengeance. I think literally when these guys like DDK, Sean, and Mike's are on Twitter and like, oh, time to go back in the lab, I literally think they're not sleeping for fucking 24 hours just so that they can iron out every single kink that they have and any type of like different iterations from studying tape from other teams to be like, oh, they've exploited our weakness through this. How would this work against the next team that we have to play that has a different composition than Ghost potentially that doesn't have like a KO in there, right? So I feel that there's a lot going on for 100 Thieves right now just to make sure that they're able to stay on top and stay fresh. I think that's one thing, for example, that OpTic is able to do very well, Ghost able to do very well, even EG. So I think that's why the competition is like super, super tight in North America. So, I mean, yeah.
You got time now, though, over the last couple weeks. You've had time to go back to the lab from scratch. I think this is where now you kind of get tested coming into playoffs with like, okay, you don't have, your week to prepare to fix those things. I do think, though, for a lot of these guys, it won't be like going back to from scratch, right? It'll be like that other idea that we had, that B plan, that C plan that we didn't really fully flesh out. And maybe now we got that extra little piece of info to piece it together where we're going to polish it off kind of. So
yeah.
I think it's going to be really interesting, and teams that have those, like the guys you're mentioning there, I think that's a huge advantage moving on to playoffs versus, I know, especially in EMEA, there's some teams that are running light on that back end.
I think FPX is one of those, right? I think FPS and OpTic are pretty similar in terms of like trying something new every single week, where they're getting a lot of success out of it, right?
But Angels, your route.
I was about to say that.
The Doom Bros coaching deadlift. Yeah, we love those.
I was just about to mention, I mean, another team that's been trying to, push the envelope and trying different compositions every week and also integrating a Yoru in their composition is Energy, and they haven't had the best success out of it either. So going into this matchup versus the Guard on week number 5, it almost felt like a matchup of both of these teams going back into their comfort picks. So the Guard going back into like Valen on Astra, you have Net going back on Killjoy depending on the map, you have Trent going back as Sova on certain maps as well. So it's and then for Energy, it's like, Okay, well, EU pops off as a fade on this map, but everything else, let's keep it to where we don't have to be as whimsical and just work on our synergy. And I feel that Energy found the right moment, of course, because they needed to qualify to find that level of synergy that they needed against the Guard that were at some point about to qualify in this group stage because of because they were able to go back to their comfort picks. Sorry. So now you're looking at this game. What's your take on Energy losing the first map here on Bind when it was their, I think it was their map pick, right, Anderzz?
Yeah. Energy picked Bind, and then they ended up dropping it. It's interesting that you're talking about like comfort and all of these things, because obviously like the Guard was struggling immensely for a couple weeks there, and many, myself included, was just mauling on Twitter like, put people back on the agents they're comfortable on, please, please, I'm begging you. And I think that this is an indication of why there was so much of an outcry for that. Like, I understand that like teams are always going to try and innovate, to try to implement more systems, but as soon as something stops working, you sort of have to reassess and pivot. And I think that they did a good job of that. I think that it just happened late enough in the day, or in the event, more literally, that comfort wasn't going to be enough to get them through anymore. You had to have some sort of momentum behind you in addition to that comfort. And so you still see those sort of flashes of brilliance and flashes of excellence from the Guard in instances like this where they're back on their comfort. They're playing against one of the teams that I think is honestly one of the better teams in North America, but just really hasn't had enough of a resume at this point to really get the credit for it. I think we're going to see Energy continue to perform really well in the coming weeks. But I think the Guard performing well against them in certain instances tells the story of just how good this team is when they're still in the systems that they had developed very broadly, and no one's really worried about figuring out something new. But there still isn't that additional element of the momentum behind them, that almost like whimsical, you can't stop us, like young energy that they had in their previous runs.
Yeah. And now they have like the boot camp buff. They're all hanging out together. I think Valen had a right moment in the past 2 weeks to pop off the way that he did, because you know he was under the I guess under the gun as people were harping on his performances for the previous weeks when he was not playing an Astra but doing very well. And I think when it comes back to being able to play comfort picks, it's also something that shined over the other side for Energy too. Even though Energy lost this round, there's been so many good heroic plays from both of these teams, especially in like not necessarily clutch situations. It's just like one person popping off in mid round or an end round that gets like a 3K, for example, like Tex when he comes out of the shower on Bind and is able to like headshot, I think 3 players from the Guard when they were trying to execute towards an A-side take. Like I think in terms of just firepower and the confidence of these players going head to head this week has been tremendously it has tremendously improved, and it was just really, really nice to watch. But then the Guard, they end up winning here against Energy on the first map, 13-11. Then it goes into the Guard's map pick, which is going to be on Haven. And Sideshow likes talking about it as well, so I wanted to ask your point of view, Preston, going into this. Is like, he's been saying that most of the games, if not all the games, went 2-0 when one team was like winning the pick of their opponent's map pick. So for example, you guys take one map and then unfortunately you lose it to your opponents. There's been a lot of like 2-0s in that instance. Is it just like the over preparation that all these teams currently have week to week to just study tape and anti-strat every single fucking time?
I mean, I think that's part of it. I think also this week in particular, you just saw a few matches that necessarily didn't matter. Teams don't have as much to play for as the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the issue as far as like Guard specifically. You know, this season, Bind and etc. I think you've seen their switching roles obviously helped a lot. Switching back to comfortable roles, switching back to comfortable agents, that helped. But sort of like Andrew was saying, it that doesn't bring back the confidence. And so they're not feeling themselves like they were last season. And they're still struggling overall. Like, I mean, the only team they beat was us. And say a player had the best match he's ever had in his entire career. Like statistically, the best. Literally, statistically, it's the best match of his career.
Yeah.
And so like that's the only match they've won this season, you know. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like they were built with the last meta in mind when they were built. Like they had
Yeah.
the best
Yeah.
tier 2 players of every single role, basically, right? So
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I think everyone already sort of knew they were going to struggle coming into the season a little bit just from losing confidence and then a huge meta shift. But
Mm-hmm.
I think them realizing that they can play to their strengths and it can work will be a big help for them going into next season for sure, or LCQ even, I
Yeah.
guess for them. Because I think they definitely have a chance if they take the next few weeks, the next month before LCQ and get their confidence back, get their swagger back. I think
Mm-hmm.
even with quote unquote dinosaur comps, they have a chance to upset and be really good for sure.
Yeah. I'm just hoping that Saya player is going to be in a lab for like the next month and a half just to practice his satchel charges and make sure that he comes out as like a chaos raise, because already like we're seeing sort of like a smaller shift when you're looking at this comp from Haven on the guard against Energy. It's like, okay, cool. They're trying to go with the meta, but they also don't have the best raise, and they're playing the comfort pick of having Saya player playing Jet instead. So you don't have like the the C's Nate combination or anything like that's going to be able to press the way the trap plays like Ghost does, for example. But at least looking at Trent now playing a Fade, it gives you an indication that they are trying things out and just getting ready for what's going to happen with LCQ after.
It's funny because FaZe had a similar issue, right? If you guys
Mhm.
remember the beginning of the season, FaZe was struggling the most, right? They struggled
Yeah.
the most at the beginning of the season. And that's because Jet got nerfed and people were trying to transition to Jet. And what does Baby Bay play? For a
Yeah.
while they tried and they ended up doing an Icebox again, but they ran him at Chamber for a little bit, but then
Mhm.
they scrapped that, ended up wanting him to play Duelist. And I think the fix for them was playing Neon. So I think that's sort of like the question for Guard is like if say a player can't play Raze or if it's not comfortable for him or if it's not fitting his playstyle, because like Raze doesn't fit Bebe's playstyle, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
you can't go full crazy mode and go wild on Raze like you can on Neon or Jet, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a question for say a player coming up is if it's not Raze, can it be Neon? Can he just run around and make plays as Neon? Because
Yeah.
it plays similar to Jet at the end of the day, especially on defense where you make you play, use your wall, get away, you know? And so maybe that's something that they can do to help transition into the quote unquote new meta.
Yeah. And then again, trying to go back to that raise, we get into the third map where we're able to play split between these two teams. We had an amazing first map and second map, and then suddenly it's like, okay, well, it might get close on the third until we see like a 7-0 pretty much for Energy at this point. EU's popping off. He's winning every single duels against everybody. We don't really have any opportunities for the guard to really execute into his sight. I don't necessarily think that it looked like it was unsynchronized sight hits here for the guard. I feel like they just didn't really have a plan outside of like, okay, defaulting mid, and then what's the next step. I don't know if you saw something different here, Anders, looking at the game.
I mean, I think that this game in general, it's again just a story of like, in my opinion, Energy not getting as much credit as they deserve
Mm-hmm.
as a roster. Like they came into this with not necessarily like the meta defining comp. I don't think that Fade is really going to be like a star pick on Split anytime soon. But they came into this with great plans. I don't think that the guard is really in a position where they got to play their comfort picks to the level that they do on other maps, just because of
Mhm.
what's forced by Split in particular. And Energy came in with a great game plan that's a little bit aberrant from what most teams are going to expect as the norm.
Mm-hmm.
Like the how many teams are running a Fade right now on this map, and how prepped was the guard for that, whether or not they're on comfort picks.
Yeah.
Like those are the sort of things that are going to throw a wrench into this, and why Energy ran away with this compared to the other maps in the series.
Yeah. And then you have like some weird ass flicks that Hayes is doing on top mid when they're like leading by so much
Totally
that they're...
intentional, not lucky flick at all. I don't know what you're talking about. Hayes is a god.
James the Wisdom Cobb, as I like to call him. But yeah, I definitely do think that when it comes down to the comp and what you've practiced, what you haven't practiced, I guess that's some of the reps that the guard hasn't had, potentially, right? With what's going on through boot camp and practice. I do agree with that. I also think they had a hard time just penetrating into the A site when Ethan's running great utility for getting information as a KO, right? You're playing a double agent that's able to get information across maps between the KO and the Fade, and especially the Fade for your site retakes is actually quite strong as well. I think this matched pretty well. I actually really like Energy's comp on this map of Split as well, and it shows in the end how it became a very one-sided affair from the very beginning, right? I think we ended at the half at a 10-2 for Energy, and then the guard won pistol, where you have like a little bit of a hope going into the second half. I mean, Saya player is also not being like a shaky race player. It's been working out quite well for Saya player on this map, but just overall for the rest, it wasn't their day, unfortunately, for a split to be able to get that result against Energy. So yeah, look at the highlights from Daniel.
I was gonna say
ACS from EU, like this guy's fucking cracked.
I gotta go on a little bit of a tangent here.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I appreciate production highlighting these stats. I think that EU, EU is like sleeper, probably like one of my top in-role players in all of North America, because I swear you can go back as far as you want to like EU playing on T1.
T1 Academy.
Yeah, he's consistently a standout player on every roster he's ever played for, and he's just never made his way towards the top. Now he's on a team that's fairly close to the top, and he's still just smashing. Like, he is diffing the shit out of people. And like, he's not in anyone's conversation for like a best in-role player. And I'm like, how can you consistently produce results of this level at every level as you're consistently ascending, now be very near the top, continue to put up incredible results, and nobody's talking about it? Like, I think he's probably one of the most underrated players in NA right now. Actually insane.
He doesn't get the frag movies or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, even because I don't think it was casted, but the first time where I was like, oh shit, who the hell is this T1 Academy? Then I had to look through the Wikipedia to see who they were. And I hate talking about this event, but the fucking Pulse Invitational. I think it was like the group stages that they had. It was actually a game where T1 Academy, if I'm not mistaken, got a tie in the groups against Sentinels when Sentinels was like starting to get on the come up, right? So to see that, I was like, holy shit, who's in this sled? And I'm like, I see EU, I see Kohler. I see a bunch of guys that throughout the T1 Academy turned out to be playing for some really strong teams today. So it's nice that EU has that opportunity right now with Energy, and that he has his shot, and people are seeing that for once EU's better than NA. So then we talk about like sleeper picks, sleeper players. Now let's talk about sleeper matches. It's the Sentinels versus Cloud9 Blue game.
Great segue.
Yeah, I think right now we could just like kind of skim through it, right?
Can I ask a question real quick? Sorry, just why was there only one game on Saturday? What happened there?
What do you mean there was only one game on Saturday? It was 2 games on. Oh, because Sentinels was playing on Saturday, or was that Sunday?
Oh.
There were 3 on Sunday. It says 1 on Saturday and 2 on. So only Energy the guard.
I think
Saturday,
probably.
apparently.
I think you have like different time zones where maybe because of some delays.
Oh shit, that makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, right. I assumed it would have compensated for that, but that's my bad. Okay.
Yeah,
now
no,
we're all
good.
making sense.
You're good.
Trust
there was some weird drama that I hadn't heard of.
Like I said, Mitch, Ben, we're all like not really paying attention to this game overall, anyways. Just like we weren't paying attention to the brackets. So yeah, I mean, this was kind of cool, I guess. Zeppa's not playing a fade. He's not playing Raze. They're going back to putting Zeppa into a Sky, putting Curry into the Zeta role, and then going back to what worked in like, I guess, week 1 or even open qualifiers when you're like, oh shit, DRX does this. But then overall against Sentinels, it was like that. You don't want to finish your game like that. And unfortunately, I thought it was Tens that died, because Tens unfortunately didn't have like the best of the games, but to die to the Sky Tiger as your last kill against Shazam, that hurts, man. That stings. That stings for a lot of people.
I put out a tweet about it, about like how heartbreakingly poetic it was, because like that dog kill to close out a 13-2 map pretty much just summarizes the back half of like Sentinel's season. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of months for them, because like it ain't great.
That's the thing that I want to ask you, Preston, because from like and you as well, Anders, feel free to chime in after, because both of you guys being like having the behind the scenes, being the coach, understanding like the player mentalities and whatnot and what's going on. You know, us from the outside looking in, we're always talking about, oh, Sentinel this, Sentinel that. They need to change comps. They're not the best right now. They're not following the meta. They're too stubborn. They're streaming too much. What do you think is really going on when you're looking at the practice? Because even MCU was like tweeting it out. It's like, wait until you guys see Sentinels at full strength, where they don't have to play with subs all the time. They're actually still a very good contender. Unfortunately, that we weren't able to see that in the past like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty unfortunate they had to play with Ruckus, and then before that, I think they even had a different sub, right? So,
Yeah.
it's definitely really, really unfortunate for them. And when you're already losing confidence, and you have to do in a situation like that, like just as a player, you just lose motivation. Like it's just hard to care
Hmm.
when you know that you're in situations like this that you pretty much have no control over, right?
Hmm.
And that's on top of whatever other issues may be going on in the team on top of that. And this match in particular against Cloud9, I mean, dude, when's the last time you seen Tens go negative 22,
Yeah.
23 or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that doesn't happen. That
Hmm.
doesn't happen.
Hmm.
Even when he has bad games, it's never that bad.
Hmm.
You know?
Especially on
And
Jet, right?
yeah, yeah, especially on Jet. And Cloud9 is obviously still a really good team, dude.
Hmm.
If you replay the group today, they probably make playoffs,
Hmm.
right? And so they're obviously really, 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 really good. And Sentinels in the scenarios they were in, pretty much, I'd say it's near impossible to play in
Yeah.
the situations they were in. On top of their limited practice schedule and stuff like that, it's probably impossible for them to be expected to even win a single match, which obviously they didn't, right? So
Yeah.
I think for them going forward in their future, it's sort of like figure out what do they want, what do they want to do, what do the players want to do.
Hmm.
Shazam has talked about retiring 1,800 times, right? Um, Tens, we know before, like he has no problem leaving a team or leaving a successful team to play with somebody else if he really wants to. And come franchising, who knows what's going to happen roster wise. I think you could see some crazy, crazy roster mania. And so I think for Sentinels, it's going to be, do they make franchising? If they make franchising, which players still want to play? If which players still want to play, who's getting control of the roster and being able to make it right? Because currently the players have control, right? So does it come down to Shazam? Does it come down to Tens? Like who gets control of the roster and who gets to make the changes they want?
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
their future, to be honest with you.
And while we have like the the second map rolling through, I want to ask on the other end though for Cloud9 Anderzz, what's your take on how Curry's been developing through the past in the past few weeks? I know it's been shaky. Again, they're another team that's been under their radar just because of Curry's performances. Vanity playing initiator, and then suddenly there's like a identity crisis for this team. How does it look now that you finally have Vanity continuing to play a controller for the past 2 weeks and seeing Curry going into flex roles that he's already done within T1 before he made the switch over to Cloud9?
Considering how much we've seen of them, I think they're doing as good to slightly above where I would expect them to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wish we had information on, and I mean, if any of you have heard any of this, feel free to chime in and correct me, but like, how long have they been practicing with Curry leading up to this? Was this a change with Zeta and Autumn that they knew was coming like a month or so in advance, and they were working with Curry for a couple weeks of scrims? Because like,
I don't think so. Right?
It was
I
a
don't
couple
thi-
days to a week.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
skipped them, right? It was a couple days to a week. Like the match
Perfect.
they
So
played
yeah,
before they do.
that was the assumption that I had made, is that it was like
Mhm.
very short term. Based off of that amount of practice, I would say that they're performing better than they should be.
Mhm.
Like, if this is what they're doing with that little runway, that I would expect this team to get better and better. And I think, Preston, you just said, like, if we play back the groups right now, they probably make playoffs. If they had that little practice with Curry, I agree 110% with you. I think that if they were allowed to get proper reps with him as an element in their team and rebuild their systems, they would be a playoff team, no questions asked.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean part of the issue with Curry too is like obviously he played for Tier 1 org and T1, but he hasn't
Yeah.
played Tier 1 competition almost in the entirety of Valorant, right? Like it's been
Mhm.
like he's been on T1 since the very beginning, so they had some obviously Tier 1 competition early on, but I mean it's probably been 6 months to a year since he's played relevant top tier competition, honestly.
Mhm.
At least consistently. And so he's gonna have to learn. He's gonna have to grow. Like he's obviously a great CS player. He was really good in CS, and he's
Yeah.
been really good T1 in this game. But it's different playing at this level, and it's different fitting into C9 system. They're obviously a team that has a system and has a way they want to play and have a very clear identity. And Curry's going to have to sort of find his fit inside that identity. And I think you can sort of see him already starting to play a little bit better. And I think going into LCQ, I think you'll see a completely different C9 for sure.
Mhm. I even think then, like T1 when they were playing in the NSG's monthlies and the PK Knights monthlies, it was once in a while. Curry
They
just
didn't win
joined
many
this-
of those.
Exactly, right? Because even that team was going through roster changes and identity crisis, so they were trying to figure things out. So I don't think that Curry always had the opportunity to really get that practice in. Whereas, for example, you guys, Juv3nile, when you were still with the crew, when EG's been grinding out the scene after the roster changes, and 100 Thieves starting to look into the NSGs after building the roster. They're putting those reps in and building that synergy, and I think now it's just a matter of time with Curry and Cloud9. And unfortunately, the reps that he has with the team has been through the fucking mid stages of Group B trying to fucking qualify for Copenhagen. So it's not that easy, the amount of pressure, the pressure that could show up and weigh you down while you're just trying to fucking learn your role with a brand new team. Even if you've played with these guys in the past or against them in Counter-Strike, it's a whole different game. It's not going to be the same thing. Yeah, so that said, we're going to get into the last match of the group. So that's going to be the OpTic and LG game. So at least for me, OpTic and LG, when it first started on that map on Split, a map chosen by LG, we have a comp that comes out where OpTic has played this before. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but this was also looking back at the old school mech from Split when we got into the open qualifiers. So OpTic decided not to have any switches going into this game. In terms of agent composition, and it worked out really well, and I thought it was going to be a snooze fest against LG, until LG finally got their defender side, and then something about Moose and a Cypher on this map just changed the whole perspective of how LG just held their sights on A.
I think
Yeah,
that
Go ahead.
I think that this map was like a tale of two very, very different styles and showing why each has its distinct advantages.
Mm-hmm.
You've got OpTic with like this neon hold W. We're sacrificing our duelist slot for our chambers so that we still have a primary op. And then you have the other side of that coin where like, oh, we're going to allocate our Sentinel slot to this Cypher still. So we have this incredible lurk element in the way that we're allowed to play the game. And the two very, very different play styles that those two compositions enable. I mean, you can talk about the balanced state of this game for hours upon hours upon hours, but I think that this match on this map in particular highlights one of the like healthier, like specific instances of the meta that we've had in a very long time, where I think it is a very true stylistic matchup where both compositions are balanced, both comps have very distinct strengths and weaknesses, and both teams played them well within the styles that those comps embody.
Mm-hmm. Preston, we're going to add something else here?
No, yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with that. I think they made the double duelist comp work. They played really well. I think the part of the issue is B-Dog, when he plays chamber, like he feels as impressive as Ye. So when you take him off that chamber, and as you saw, like Ye sort of farmed as the first kills on this map. He was 9-1 actually. And so when you take away that constant pressure there that you can consistently battle him and he has someone to worry about, it makes his job a lot easier. And so I feel like Ye pretty much was a difference maker there for sure. As far as that match goes, and I think being able to bounce back like he did after last week is pretty much what first bad match of his entire career, quote unquote bad. He was like -1, right? He showed off pretty much like why OpTic is probably the favorites going into the playoffs, to be honest. Even still.
Yeah. And even when you're looking at LG overall, it's like, oh, we always needed like the pop-off potential and ability that B-Dog could bring into this roster, and that was actually one of these series where unfortunately not necessarily B-Dog was not able to activate, but I think they were able to shut them down a lot into exactly what you were saying here, Preston, these duels between himself and Ye, which I think that the story continues on into the second map once you get into onto Acend, because yeah, it's nice that we're able to get like an overtime matchup, a comeback from LG, flash in a pan, and like bring up that momentum into the second map if possible. But really, when you're going into this comp and you're pulling out the Killjoy again, I think you're now. I don't know if this is more like a comfort pick for this comp here for LG. Has it been a while since they've played? Because at some point when you're looking at LG, they weren't really picking or choosing to play Ascent as much, because I feel that they felt pretty comfortable enough with the current comps that they had. But OpTic definitely showed that they had more comfort on this map with also going through a different look, right? They pulled out the triple initiator, a comp that beat them the previous week that was pulled out by Common Company over at EG. And they actually played this comp quite well. What's your take about the triple initiator here, Anderzz?
the 100 Thieves throwback. No, I mean, Triple Initiator has always been sort of like an intriguing idea on this map, but like, I could never really get behind it. I think that right now with Chamber being sort of in play, it's probably the best situation you've ever had for it to sort of come into being. That said, I think that there's a lot of room to improve on a Triple Initiator comp if you were going to run it. Like, I look at the way that OpTic set themselves up here, and it's very much so like an OpTic version of a Triple Initiator comp, not one that necessarily leans into the most optimal like utility that a Triple Initiator would be able to give you access to. And I think that speaks probably to the influence that Chet has on this roster. I mean, you've heard the players in interviews be like, oh yeah, one of the biggest value adds that Chet has is he just has like this fucking binder of comps, and he just pulls one out for us each week, and he's like, this is what we're playing, this is how we play it, ready, set, go. And I think that this is probably a result of that, where it's not necessarily what I would consider like the strictly optimal version of a Triple Initiator comp for this map, but it's one that Chet has probably workshopped and has probably realized has really very well-tailored elements in it for the specific team that they have, and it just allows them to run away.
Yeah. I kind of like it too, and I do agree after listening to the interview, because I think, was it Victor in the interview said, okay, you're playing this into the map, no questions asked from Victor, and he's just going to do it. But when it comes down to like trying to figure out the synergy into like, for example, this little comp right here, if you're looking in a comparison of how OpTic retakes versus how EG was doing it, for example, where they got that upset win against OpTic, on, for example, the recon dart from crashes from B all the way to A, and then on top of that, a haunt coming into the site at the same time from their fade that just allows them to overtake a site from a KO flash. I mean, it's quite strong. So you definitely need some good synergy to be able to set up this type of play. It's not one of those easy seal to strats, and it's a pay to win kind of thing. You still need to add a little bit more to it. So props to that, at least for OpTic to still make it work. Despite the series going in favor of OpTic, it's still going to be just a game that goes into seeding, right? It was one of those games where if LG won, they had first of the group, and then if OpTic won, they were ahead of the group too. And to be ahead of the group for OpTic, they also had to be ahead of the curve, which is why looking at Acend, they've gone through comp to comp to comp. They went from like a Yoru, they went over to a Neon, and now they have this Triple Initiator. And I think now we have a SOT actually between Smix and also Ye that explains a little bit why they've been going through different comps every week. So let's check it out.
Yeah, kudos to you guys, because despite that enormous momentum that LG accrued, you were able to finally put a stop in their tracks. I want to also talk about Acend, because it's clear that OpTic has put in a lot of time in trying out different things. We saw you guys on Neon, and then on Yoru, and now today we saw the Triple Initiator comp. So talk to us about the process of, you know, all of the different iterating that you have done and why you landed on this today.
I mean, it's hard to say, to be honest with you, because since the recent Jet basically nerf, it kind of screwed her a lot on Ascent, in my opinion. I know some teams still run her, but like, in our opinion, she's just not very good anymore. So like for us, we've been trying to find like a substitute or replacement, or like a different way of playing as well, since Fade has also made a big introduction, and Fade is like probably one of the most picked initiators on that map now, and she is super strong. So we've been trying to find like what is a good balance with like with the recent nerfs and like with the recent buffs and obviously the new agent. So for us, it's just been, we've been experimenting even with, you know, with the Yoru buffs, see how that plays out. And now we're trying out this Triple Initiator one, which we found like a lot of success with here as well recently.
So like I said, they always have to stay ahead of the curve, but the good thing about it for OpTic is that at least they have like a roster that's complete from top to bottom of like, okay, if we're going to try something new and like the synergy doesn't work, at least it could, and it's a layer of like, okay, if Ye doesn't get a frag, well, at least we can count on Victor. We can count on Victor. We can count on FNS's lurk. Like, there's still something that could still have them pull something out of their ass until they figure out, like, okay, what is the best comp that we could actually use so they could have a better chance in the playoffs and a better chance into Masters. But speaking about the playoffs, that means that after that series, we actually concluded our 4 teams of each group that's moving out here, as you could see through this bracket now. So FaZe Clan is going to face off against 100 Thieves. I mean, overall, looking at this bracket, I think it's tough to predict really who are the 2 teams that are going to make it through, especially when you're looking at these matchups head to head. So, Preston, what's your take? What's the biggest match that pops into your eyes, at least to start things off, and potential matches into the future?
Yeah, man. Honestly, all the matches look amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
As far as the first round, I think FaZe Clan versus 100 Thieves is gonna be pretty interesting. Like, I actually like, I don't know if that's just because we play well against 100 Thieves normally, but I think I actually favor FaZe Clan right now. I think it's just the way they've been playing lately. They're upset against Cloud9. The way they looked last week against EG, like they won some big matches against some good teams.
Yeah.
And it feels like they've sort of found their stride and sort of found what works for them currently in the current meta and the way they want to play it. And so I feel like that's going to be a really good match, and I think FaZe honestly might take it 2-1. And then the lower bracket match, or if they end up playing XSET, I guess I should say. If they end up playing XSET, that should be extremely close, and every single one of these teams can beat each other. Like I said, I really think there's a world where FaZe could actually make a run and honestly like end up in the upper bracket finals.
Wow. Okay.
Ghost versus EG, obviously like Ghost has looked amazing this season. EG beat OpTic, like dude, every single one of these matches, like, I would not want to be. I would not want to be any of these teams having
Yeah,
to prep
yeah.
for the other team this week, and our entire season relying on this match. Because the Ghost has obviously looked insane. I have players I've coached on both teams, Calm too, from EG, and so they both teams I think have a chance to win that match.
Yeah.
I honestly think EG actually might win it. As we've seen each step of the way, and I hope this doesn't happen, but each step of the way, Ghost has sort of struggled early on in their next step of progression. And I don't know if it's nerves, I don't know if it's just getting used to playing the higher tier competition or what it is, but they usually struggle when they first have like a new experience somewhere. And so I think they might have a little bit of nerves coming into this playoff match, and I think EG might be able to take it just purely based off even if it's a little bit of a new roster, some of the experience from last season.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's actually look at the favorites of each group too, Anderzz, because we mentioned at top of show, XSET, they probably have not necessarily the easiest bracket, but the best chances versus the teams that are currently hot and okay or on the rise to be able to qualify for Masters. So first off, your take on XSET, will they have what it takes to qualify? And for OpTic Gaming, are they still going to be like overshadowed by everybody else and they won't make it through, or should they make it convincingly?
So I think that OpTic is still absolutely a favorite to make it through. I think anyone that thinks that OpTic isn't a favorite to make it through is kind of trolling.
Yeah.
That said, I'm kind of on the same train of thought as Preston, where like I look at that top half of the bracket with XSET and I'm like, shit, FaZe Clan is actually poised to make a run, like a deep run, because the way that FaZe plays is the type of thing that is going to. You look at 100 Thieves, you look at XSET, and they're very prep heavy teams. They've got wonderful support staff. They're very cerebral rosters. FaZe is the type of lineup that is going to poke a hole in every like atom-sized gap in your setups. That's just how they operate. And so if they aren't playing flawlessly, FaZe is going to run through them. That's just how it's going to happen. And so that's sort of my check for XSET is like, A, does FaZe come out as hard and fast as I expect them to? And B, if it does come to that second round matchup of FaZe versus XSET, can you weather the storm? If they can do that, then I think that they're going to Copenhagen. Because that would, to me, be sort of proof of concept where, like I was mentioning earlier, it's like, I feel like they're a great team, but sometimes they're just lacking that X factor. The way that they play the game in a macro strategic style up versus FaZe, they won't beat FaZe unless they have X factor. And so that would very much so be a confirmation of what I think they need to sort of prove themselves.
That's the interesting part too, because when you're looking at these teams and we talk about, okay, they've had a whole week to prepare. This time you've had a couple of weeks to figure out which would be your most comfortable pick in terms of compositions, and probably stick to that from like day to day, because now you're going into a system in the playoffs where you have to play, I think, 3 matches or 4 matches over the weekend in the first weekend, and then 3 more matches, but the most important one on potentially like the Friday or the Saturday the week after, to just make sure you make it to the grand finals on Sunday, right? So there's your preparation is going to be your preparation window is going to be so much smaller versus everybody else too. So yeah, we 100 Thieves and FaZe, they have a whole week to prepare against each other, but then only 1 day to prepare against XSET, where XSET has all the time in the world to like figure out what they want to do for the week and also observe your match. So that's why I think like looking at the favorite ones that made it out of the group, XSET and OpTic still have a great chance to pull through. I think OpTic is a clear favorite for one, but then you're looking at the other team. I think it's a toss-up between every single one of those teams that we just talked about. And the crazy part about this too is I kind of want, not the crazy part, I think when you're looking at this bracket, you kind of want OpTic to be one of those two teams. Because if you look at the rest of the teams, none of them has had that international experience in Valorant yet, right? Nobody's played that big stage in Iceland or in Berlin or...
Are we going to have Guard
exactly.
2.0?
Exactly. and what's you guys' take on that? Do you fear that they're going to have a rude awakening for the second team that would qualify if it's a team that's outside of OpTic?
I really want to jump in here because I think that honestly that Ghost EG match is almost like a precursor to exactly what you're describing. I feel like EG is a team that has been showing phenomenal growth and is rising very quickly towards the top, but they haven't, and I've talked about this a bunch. It's like I'm hesitant to get on like the EG hype train. I mean, obviously I'm going to be biased towards them because one of my ex-players in Apo is on their lineup, but even so, like I have been so hesitant to buy in because it's like, how long have they really been putting up results? And that's just domestically in NA, let alone if they were to somehow make it to Copenhagen. Like, what level of experience do they have? What level of endurance, durability do they have when they start facing like extreme adverse circumstances? We haven't really seen that thus far, and they're going to have to really sort of bounce back, even just in this matchup where they're coming off of a loss. He's just going to have to bounce back to be able to beat Ghost, who's one of the best teams in their group. And then even if they were to get past that, like how far is their, frankly, inexperience going to be able to last? And that applies to a couple of teams where it's like you might have great domestic success, but if your name isn't OpTic, like how well have you done internationally?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I think it's going to be a very tough one for these teams, especially for a team that's outside of OpTic that's going to qualify. But before we get there, they actually have to play the games. And we don't know who's going to make it through, but you're going to have to tune in to make sure you're able to watch that. That's going to be starting this Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, here for the NA VCTs at Playoffs. And it's going to be a fucking banger of matches. I'm mostly looking forward to the EG and Ghost game to kick things off over the weekend. But yeah, I think we have NAVCT that's going to start this weekend. EMEA also. Before we talk about EMEA, we need to go for that break to cover the EMEA in week number 5. So before we close things off, of course, as usual, thank you so much, Anderzz. Thank you so much, Juv3nile. What's coming up in stores for you guys? I think, Anderzz, you got Game Changers coming up here, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I've got Game Changers coming up. I'm jealous of you guys being able to talk about EMEA here after the break, but I have to go win a tournament. Most likely against Juv3nile's org's female team. So sorry about that, buddy, but I gotta take that up. So, but that's what I have going on. I've literally got my teams in the warm up for Sakura Cup right now. We play the quarterfinals in just under an hour. So that's what I've got going on.
That's hell yeah. Busy schedule here for Anderzz. So
yeah, busy winning.
Coming out. Sakura Cup going on right now, thanks to the Knights, of course. The Knights and NSG always doing a great job for these monthly tournaments for all divisions to make sure that we stay on top of our skills here to compete in Valorant. So, Juvie, what's up? What's coming up for you right now?
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple weeks off. Obviously, our season has ended. We don't even have LCQ really, unless Riot expands the teams. Might be more than 8, hopefully. But outside of that, we don't really have much going on because I'm gonna spend time with my kids. Try to watch some of these Valorant playoff matches, and hopefully, be able to take some back to my players. You know.
Hell yeah. Yeah, well, good luck with that. Hopefully it turns out well for you, Juvie. Take that small break that you need because it's been a heavy and busy month for you in the past month. So still, congratulations on joining TSM. Congrats on what you've done so far with TSM. I think they're on a great start to see what's gonna happen to them next year. Hopefully we're gonna see everybody stick together. I don't know the ins and outs and what's going on behind closed curtains, but like I said, they show some good promise. And I actually want to know what you guys think over at the chat, those that are watching live or those that are tuning in right now on the audio platforms, because it's right now in the present as you hear it, right? I want to know what you think. Who's going to make it in the NAVCTs? And make sure you tag us over at VALORANTING and Twitter so we can check out the replies that you have. And we can, of course, give you a shout out on that too. With that, let's go for a break. And when we come back, we cover EMEA VCTs.
If you've been enjoying Valoranting, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you get every episode hot off the presses.
Daniel, you had me holding my breath and smiling for the longest time. I thought I was going to turn blue. Thankfully, not as blue as my painting because it's not even here right now. I'm actually moving my office around the map. But look at who's blue in the background. It's Mitch Man, and he's also white. So yeah. Let's just call him White Man. So it's just you and me, Mitch, right now. I don't know why you have more importance in the show than I do. That I'm supposed to be a smallest square. What the fuck's going on here?
CMEA, bro. I'm taking over. Fuck you. You're imagining paintings behind you and all. Hey, look at my Picasso. You like that one? It's right up there. I got one over here. Gorgeous stuff. Yeah, man. It's gonna be good.
Abstract painting. Abstract painting.
Yeah, and look, you got to imagine it. It can be whatever blue you want it to be, and that, if anything, is the most beautiful kind of art. If we really think
that's
about
true.
It.
The blue is my favorite color. Not my mood right now though, because my mood's kind of like yellow. I'm really happy right now. I don't know why. Probably spending time with you, and also because we get to talk about EMEA. So let's actually have a look at those groups for the week. So I guess as we get into this right now, Mitch Man, we talked about it before. There's been a lot of these games that's been around seeding. Some games that weren't that as important. Some games potentially that were snooze fests. But overall, what's your take and what really popped out to you this weekend for the matches that you've casted and watched?
Yeah, I guess I'll bring people through the list as we have it there. I was brought in on the Friday to cover. We had a little bit of an issue there, so I jumped on with Tom last minute. We went through these games. So we've got Acend FPX, which was just a seeding game essentially. We'll go into that game. I'm sure it was actually a really interesting one and a fun one to watch for sure. Team Liquid versus Mech. Mech losing that game basically meant that their playoffs were still pretty secure. But there was a potential for a 4-way tie to break out if Big won their game versus BBL. So Mech wanted to win versus Liquid to guarantee playoffs for both teams. Mech failed to do that. So then it came down to the Big game later, and Big lost to BBL. So it ultimately, none of these games ended up mattering. It panned out as the first two were seeding games. The Navi Guild was probably the longest game of all time. My God, these teams defaulted for literally 1:40 every single round. FOKUS OG, another fairly lengthy one, which again didn't really carry any weight. The only thing I would say about the FOKUS OG one, I actually think that OG London United had a chance to make LCQ or possibly locked in LCQ if they won. And FOKUS gained nothing by winning. So FOKUS won, just to really be dicks and, ruin OG London United's day. FOKUS got their win on the board. Big loss to BBL, which was kind of expected, and the Fnatic G2 game was closer, I think, than most people expected, but the caveat of that always is going to be that the game didn't fucking matter. Fnatic were top seed no matter what. So obviously they came in, they played similar enough comps to what we've seen in the past, but there was a lot of randomness in there on the actual round-around play. So it's not a result I would in any way draw conclusions from. I still think Fnatic are by far the best team out there.
Yeah. I think even if you're looking at the groups in themselves or how these matches went, even though they weren't that important, quote unquote, it's nice to see like the favorites that you're currently following that could represent EU, right? That's going to represent EU at Masters to be like, okay, will they keep this level of consistency? What new are they bringing out? Oh, there's a new comp here from FPX. How will that pan out? And see how that how that will turn out. So excited to see how this is going to pan out as we talk about these matches. But before we get to talk about these matches, we actually have a surprise guest, actually. Somebody that came on and just said, yo, tag me in. We actually have Neekz, formerly of Alliance, actually, with you, Mitch, man. So let's welcome Neekz over onto the show. Neekz, very nice to meet you, my man. Welcome, and thank you so much for your time for hanging out with us.
Hey, guys. How are you doing?
Not bad. Not bad. You have a little bit of tape hanging out of your headset, bro.
Oh, I do. Do I? Oh, I do. Yeah, it's keeping it comfy. Keeping it comfy.
All right. So immediately we need to get this man sponsored up. Get him a new headset. Who we got? Come on, Orcs. You reach out. His Twitter link's down below. We'll all give it a retweet. Good lads. Good lads.
So Neekz, give us a little bit of a background, as this is the first time that you came onto the show. As I mentioned before, you probably had some past experience with Mitchman over at Alliance, but what's been going on for you? How'd you get involved in Valorant, and how do you see this game right now?
I played CS competitive, not really competitively, to a competitive level. Not amazing, not anything. Just got into it. Got into coaching for a team called Smoke Criminals, where I actually linked up with Enzo. And we played a season of MDL Renegations and Advanced. A season of ESA Advanced, and went to Copenhagen Games. And
how many years ago is this now? Because this is a long time, isn't it?
I'm actually just giving you the recent. That was probably that was probably
even the
2018.
Copenhagen Games. Yeah, that's still like 5 years ago. It's still that was quite a while.
It's recent in my eyes. Recent in my eyes.
Yeah, I know. I remember it was 2018 because I ran into you at that event, didn't I?
Yeah,
didn't I see you and I came over and said hi to Enzo and stuff, like saw the team, but I didn't really know any of the guys that were playing. And then later on, we'd end up on the same team in Alliance with Enzo as the main IGL. It's fucking wild how small the world is.
You know what? What's recent for me was cast the last CS event that I've casted live. I think was. At least
don't say Copenhagen Games 2018. You'll blow my fucking
It was not. I think it was Northern Arena in 2015, but I think already CS and NA was like kind of dying. But when CS was like popping off, CS:GO and NA, I think it was ESEA LAN 14 and 15. So we're looking back at like 2012, 2013. It's been a while. Then. It's been a while.
Jesus. I didn't have a PC. No, I don't even know if I had an Xbox. I was a Wii gamer then for sure. I think I might have had the Xbox original. I wasn't on the 360.
Are you serious? You came
didn't even know you were born.
Now casting Valorant?
I used to play Call of Duty World at War on the Wii nonstop.
Hang out with
I'm
this
Halo.
Guy. I think this guy
Halo 1 and 2.
Turned from a from a Wii into a weeb. That said, let's go ahead and talk about VCT.
That, but all right.
Let's talk about EMEA. Actually, let's have your big brains and cover the FPX versus Acend. This is actually a series that I was able to catch myself just to try to see what's going on in EMEA, and I think we get into a point where for FPX, this is a second iteration of a comp that are coming into this one, but shall continue to bring more and more fade into the FPX playstyle. But Acend does still look like the Acend, almost with those numbers that we have and know Acend for on Bind. So Mitch, man, I'm going to let you kick off this series on this map.
Yeah, obviously we know these guys as a very strong team on this map, but you got to remember more recent memory, like just before this FBX game, there was the G2 one, which was super close, 13-11. Then you've got, going back a little bit further, FOKUS, which also they lost 13-7. Like it had been a little bit of a shaky streak for Acend, and obviously they'd recently made some roster changes, so of course it takes a little while to get back to form, right? And we saw them get back to form. It was a slow and steady progress, but right now they are exactly like you said, back to that original Bind team that we know and love for just being able to so consistently lock out these attack sides. I mean, these guys didn't let it go. They lose the pistol second half, right back into it, close out the game. There was not a moment, I think from round probably 3 onwards, not a moment where you felt like FPX were even starting to get a handle on the game. It was always just a hiccup for Acend that they would easily overcome.
That's a thing. I think I'm looking at, for example, FPX setting up their defender side first, right? Because they get the choice, and then we actually do see Artists playing a KO in this lineup. And for me, I like the idea of the KO. I mean, I've seen it on Bind before, but there's been a lot of these moments where Artists was playing a lot towards trying to take Shower's control, but taking Shower's control kind of like for himself, flashing out for himself, not really helping out like the retakes into the team. So FPX were in a lot of these moments where they have to try to play a retake with Xiao's haunt, but that could be easily broken because there's no flash that goes above and you just break the haunt right away. So you have no information for the retakes for FPX on defense. Is that something that you saw here, Nick's looking at this game, or did you see something different from FPX and at least something positive that came out of the defender side?
Well, FPX are like this team that'll do any sort of comp. You don't know what they'll try, and I'm not the biggest fan of KO on Bind personally. But I like the idea of the pop flashes through, but it's hard to pull off.
I think looking at how the week before FPX ran this as well, right? That was the first time we'd seen it here on the Bind, and I think Artist is probably running that because of the success he had versus OG. I think in a lot of the rounds, FPX were able to initiate very, very easily, able to just brawn them out. But they hadn't really gotten to test out their defensive side quite as much. So I think they had a lot of ideas coming in. Just to be clear, the OG game, I should say this first, was 13-3, and FPX started attack side. So Artist got a ton of opportunities to be that KO, flashing through smokes, taking space, taking fights. But then when it came to that defensive side, they didn't have to play many rounds. You know, it was closed out nicely. This time around, they start defensive side, and all of a sudden you see Artist going out for these early duels. He's actually getting challenged a lot more. He's getting taken down some of the times that he's there, and the value just isn't being found out of that KO because he's not getting the duel successfully, and then he's not getting the map control that they can exec off the majority of the time as well, and then they lose the retake ability on the utility. So I think there was a ton of things there that FPX had these signs in the other game of like, oh, this is really good, but now they've seen second half, okay, it's definitely really good attack, but we need to figure out how it fits a little bit better next time around.
Yeah, it seems like what looked pretty good though, at least for me. I when I'm looking at the second map between these two teams in the series as we get on to Breeze, is like, oh, I'm actually quite excited to see how Yoru is being implemented. So I don't know if this is like the first time or it's been done before, but I really love the implementation of Angel on Yoru on the site takes that FPX currently has. I want to know your thoughts first here, Neekz, before we could actually chime in into the comp coming out from FPX.
I love Yoru. I think what they did with what he did with the fake outs on A site, so good, man.
Yeah.
Like literally, one guy be pointed towards a cave, looking down, posted up, fake TP. He pushes aside, Angel shoots him in the side of the head.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do?
I think it was sick for sure, because even when you're looking at the comp in itself, you're not even playing like a Sova in the comp for FPX, right? You're pulling out a fade. And then you're like, okay, well, what are they going to try to do? I think theoretically, when I was looking at Fade coming out with the standard Viper wall splitting across the site, you try to get a little bit more fight and battle towards the front side of the half of A, for example, right? Because the Fade Prowlers could clear bricks, they could clear on the right side. But I think what FPX did very well was really taking mid control. And by taking mid control with what Angel was doing, was throwing like a time flash with his gate crash on the top of mid, just so that he could take mid control a lot faster here, and then go for these splits into the A site, or if they're going to pick into B, they can get into B. But the hits that they take into the A site is actually also fucking sick. There was like one round where Angel goes into his ult and puts a fake out at the doorstep of mid doors to go into A. So he gets into the site to clear out the area. Then he actually calls out his fake out. So the fake out comes up towards the A site. The whole team is following behind that fake out so that whoever's shooting it from pyramids gets flashed. And then the rest of them could just get behind and take control of backsite, which makes it even harder for Acend to retake the A site overall. There's just so much cool tech that came out of Angel, as is Yoru, especially with the double gate crash as well for the A site hits, where they definitely look like they were a lot more prepared for their attacker side on this map. But on the other end, Mitch, what do you think about their opponents pulling out the neon as well with Start Show?
Look, I think there was a lot that needed to be changed here on the Ascend side. Anyways, like you look back at the result versus Guild, it was a close enough game. Guild are top. So wait, I should say maybe there wasn't a lot that needed to be changed. But they looked at it and decided they wanted to again pull out that surprise, same way FPX did, because they hadn't run this before. We hadn't seen the actually. Just to say, against Guild, it was a normal Breeze comp, right? Something that you kind of expect to see. Coming into this one, though, they've pulled out a Fade. They've pulled out their Neon. They're really swapping things up, putting the Sky in. A ton of swaps that I'm a fan of, especially on this map. I think that they've made a good swap, and it can really put your opponents on the back foot for a prep-heavy team like FPX. That's fantastic. I think Ascend are doing great. They're also not moving away from, like, 6 months of prep because, again, new roster changes in, so you have some of these newer ideas floating around that, compared to your A strategy, they're not that far behind. You know, that doesn't require that much polishing to bring it up to standard. So I'm not against the changes that were made. I just think that the changes they made were for a good comp, but FPX had the ace up the sleeve of a fuck you comp. It was just one that put you on the back foot, made you uncomfortable. You cannot play the game the way you want to against a Yoru, or at least it is incredibly difficult if you have not come into the map thinking, let's fucking counter a Yoru. Let's make sure a Yoru can't mess us up. And if you come in like that, and you've got your ideas of how to counter utility, whatever, or blocking them on the way through, cool. I mean, we saw it on Bind, for example, having a Sage made a huge difference just to get that wall up. But if you don't come in thinking that, he will fuck your day up every single time. And you know that for those of you who've played against a good Yoru in ranked or a Smurf Yoru, motherfucking with a shorty coming in every round, taking you down. It's the worst, man. It's the worst, and I hate it. So Angel did a great job by pulling it out.
And it really felt what OpTic was kind of doing in North America too when they were playing the Ascend and put Victor on a Yoru, right? I think it was a similar thing where you can't really prepare for that. It's like, oh shit, like we just have to adapt on the fly or try to get away from all that stuff. But when you got gate crushes, that also helps you rotate and lurk the way that it's being played. Actually, speaking about that, I also like that Angel's using a Yoru where he's not using it to flank. I don't know if you guys saw the example from the previous week, but like when Sentinels was playing a Yoru on Fracture, Tens was like running all across the map just to try to flank from mid side when he initially pushes with the team into the site with the gate crash. It was kind of weird, but I think overall, when you actually bring a lot of pressure into the Yoru like Angel does, using like the flashes to be able to support himself and the rest of the team to fight into the site, it gets very, very impressive to play against your opponent. So I really like the look of this from Victor over at OpTic and also from Angel here of FPX.
I will say, I think Angel is the #1 best player on the planet. For sitting, I'd say best person. Let's include all the analysts and so on. I think he's the best at sitting and looking at a new agent and thinking, what can I do with this? What is the best? Like, looking at utility from a purely objective standpoint and figuring out how can this utility benefit my team, my comp, my idea of executing this site. And he puts it together in ways that I rarely see anyone else. And the best example, maybe not, it's not actually the best example, but it's just the most clear because he did it from day one. From day one with the fucking entry frag Brimstone. We saw that and we were like, what in the fuck are you doing? You lunatic. This is not how you play the game. And he was doing it, but it worked. And then when we sat down and talked to him in interviews, you realize that he has the right idea behind it, that when he explains his perspective, you're like, holy shit, man. I fuck you for thinking of that. But yeah, you're right. And I love watching this guy when every time I see a new agent that looks like they could be kind of tricky, I'm like, just get it in Angel's hands, man. I want to see what this guy has in his little head. I want to see what he's planning because it's always something beautiful.
Do you agree with that, Neekz, about Mitch Ben's take on Angel?
Battle Brim, man. I love the Battle Brim. Like once the utility goes on Brimstone, like it's like, what else does he have? Throw the stimmy down and you're an entry fragger.
Yeah,
folks don't refresh.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it's like it makes sense.
Yeah,
like,
we sorry, go ahead. I told you already, Neekz. You're supposed to shut me up and be like, yo, I wasn't fucking done. Shut the fuck up, then, silly. Let me finish my point. Go ahead. Yeah,
just theory crafting on time, and it's that guy, and like it's like as if they come up with a comp a day or two before. They have a Valo planted out for them. They have it set out, and then I think this will work, and then they go for it, and they're all with it. They're all together on it. So it makes things a lot easier when you have all the guys that want to respect the in-game leader's vision. So he's like the #1. He's the guy. He's the go-to guy at the moment.
Agreed. Even looking at that right now too, where you're having a person that's trying to big brain it out on different comps against different teams. We get into a third map though against Ascend where it gets technically a little bit more standard, right? You're having Sugetsu playing over on the Cypher. Speaking of which, Monster and Sugetsu, both Sentinel/Controller Viper for these teams, have had monstrous games, no pun intended, this whole series. But when you're looking at Split now for Fun plus Phoenix, it looked like they had a good idea with like this Raze and the Fade combo that was able to do a lot of pressure and actually some good trap kills into Male. But overall, Ascent still pulled off ahead with that victory. But was that solely based on just Monster's performance?
I don't think solely, but one thing I'll say straight away, you mentioned the Fade. I think the Fade was so much better. I think our metric for measuring how good Fade is right now is horrendous. We need to figure out something that highlights our utility more efficiently. I think that's probably when it comes to like Masters events and stuff and having that like big production team behind us. These like the content guys at international events are just fucking nuts. The reason being that we see like Xiao there in the clip that we just saw, there's a reveal that goes up top on top of the little king guy with the crown. and it lands up there, and it like, you look at it and almost go, oh, well, that was shit. You know, it didn't see anyone, and it didn't help anyone in the fight. But you'll notice that while that reveal is up top, Zipan's blitzing in, motherfucker doesn't look left. He doesn't check behind the pots. He doesn't check on the site right side, because it's already cleared by that, and it gives him the freedom to tunnel vision and go, I'm going to fucking kill you. Guy in elbow, you are dead, because I know ain't nobody between us right now. And he's just blitzing it through. Anybody pushes the smoke, comes out of heaven, which is going to be normally a concern of his, right? I'm blitzing straight at this guy elbow. I'm blast packing into sight and around. Well, now a guy's going to run out of heaven and kill me. What can I do? My teammates might not have an angle or whatever. You've got the reveal. He'll be instantly seen. Your teammates will be instantly on him. And even if he takes you, you're going to be traded. You know that. And on the way through, as a Raze entering, that is your job, unfortunately. So it opens up so much more room. I think this was a great pick. I think statistically, you can still look at it and say, well, kills, assists, and deaths. Technically, he was involved in, 19 fights positively, died 16 times. So I'm sure no one's sitting there going, oh, he was absolutely terrible. But I do think that it was more central to the comp than what we see on the kill feed, or what we see in assists even, or statistics, purely based on the way that they're able to move around that fade on this map. So another instance where I think FPX have some good plans up their sleeve, some good ideas. And then obviously the standard comps of, your Raze combining with, your C's nade and all that sort of stuff. That's just crazy. Every now and then that will just win you around on its own. It's good to have those wild cards.
Oh, we're definitely seeing some changes and changes of the guard and compositions for all of these teams in the roster too. A lot less Viper actually also being played on Split. So do you see now Neekz potentially like a value of using an agent different than a Viper into most of the composition that you're trying to do and run here on a map like Split, where it gives room for agents like Fate to play and add more value?
Like, Fade has great harmony, but like loads of heroes. Like the C's nade is the common one. The KO flash and the haunt at the same time. So when they peek, they shoot it. They peek the haunt. They shoot the haunt. They get flashed. It's little sick things you can do with it. Like on Split, I think the Prowler is good against the Cypher. It just nullifies the Cypher traps.
Yeah.
Like, I'd say Doom Bros is as happy as ever. He doesn't have to find a Sova there for that trap anymore, in the event.
I agree, because actually there was one of those instances where they actually did that, where they prowlered into A main and then used Zipan's paint shells a little bit deeper at the in front of the A ramp, so it breaks both traps that was set up by Monster into the site. So it's like the synergy or the theory behind having this fade is actually quite good. And I think you were mentioned as well here, Mitchman, the numbers technically wasn't really high across the board in terms of like the fragging department, but I think that's something that's very normal too. I think one of the Fate players on Split that actually had a lot of critique during the live play was actually John Cutie over here in North America, until like he was getting like a lot of assists on the first half, at least information on what's going on too, and then gets a 4v1 versus TSM. But I think like just the example of the Haunt in itself on top of the crown, if nobody's shooting it, you also get the indication that there's nobody there. Or if there's somebody shooting it, somebody's on the left. So I think in terms of that type of like assist play that you're not credited for, it brings that value into Fade. So, but nonetheless, though, I mean, we talk about Fade and how good it is, but FPX still lost. So what was that winning condition here for Acend to overtake the series?
Well, I mean, you said it earlier, right? Monster popped off, and this guy really and truly did. You look at him earlier on. Some of the guys were saying that oh yeah, you don't want an Astra going in first and so on. Well, Monster on a Cypher, some of your utilities a little bit more expandable, but if you're solo holding the site, we typically don't want you going down. He wasn't going down first. He was way positive on open duels, having a fantastic game overall. I think when you look at this guy as a newcomer to the roster, he's someone that had a lot of eyes on him. Every single person on this roster has proven themselves. We got Vac, who was like the CNED of the scene at one point. Like there was a time when in EMEA, we were just back in beta. This guy was owning every single tournament he's in. He was part of the Vitality, 5-man duelist. Like, let's get 5 of the best aimers, choke them together. We don't know how to build a team type of affair. Just didn't go well. And he's been in a bunch of teams that I think he has not been the problem with, and that if put in the right team, he could be tier 1, 100%. Monster was the guy that you're kind of like, he has promise. He's good, but like, is he good enough to be here? Like, is there a better pickup? And I know a lot of people would kind of look at him going, okay, right, he's gonna have to prove himself. And at this point, I mean, I don't know what more the kid can do, because week in, week out, he has just been phenomenal.
All right, so we get into another matchup here. It's the Masters 3 champions versus Team Liquid. I watched this game. Thankfully, that the rounds went by very, very quickly too. I know it's not that important of a game, but I know you casted this match, bitch. And what the fuck was going on Icebox, where there was like an eco to thrifty for like 6 rounds in a row?
I don't know, dude. It was absolutely wild. We literally had like, okay, Team A should win this. Oh, Team B took it. All right. Well, now Team B has this good weapon, so this will be easy. They've only got class. Oh, they've won it with the classics. Oh, okay, cool. Well, at least the next round. Nope, fuck you. It's gonna keep going. It was. I felt like I was free falling for that whole game, but it's interesting. I think again though, disappointed by Mech, and I think it just comes down to sloppy play. These guys have a lot going on right now, and they're relying on players like Nats. Nats every single week has been phenomenal. I don't know how he manages to do it, even when, you know, I think we highlighted enough last year and the year before that this guy primarily thrives off the team play. Like, if you put him in any team, he won't be the same Nats that he is on Mech or on Gambit as they were. But even though Mech are having these problems and you're seeing these shaky performances from them, he's still fucking Nats. I don't know how. It's like he doesn't need support. He has it. Let's be clear. He very much does. But the fact that when everything else fails, Nats is still there for you, it's incredible. Yeah. He is top 5 player in the world, 100%. And it's heartbreaking, this scenario they're going through right now. But I also do think that Liquid look better week on week. With Dreamass in here, you know, we had the question when he came in, same as kind of Monster, like we're saying. And I think now Liquid, from watching them play, they look like a better team than they did when he first came in. So excited for the coming weeks to see them blossom even more.
Except when he walled himself off into the A side trying to plant.
The first round. Listen, that wall wasn't great. That wall. Do we have it? Do we have it on the VOD? I hope not.
I don't think we do. They try, but at least for context, for those that are listening here as audio listeners or people in the chat that haven't seen the clip, is just like trying to go for the standard pixel plant at generator on the A side, and it just walled himself off, and they had to run back into the mid side. They're already playing in the back, getting ready for post plant mollies and fucking shot darts, and then they just all had to push it to the fucking side and fucking die.
Plant, guys. That was the first round, right? Because I'm pretty sure we were like, yeah, well, we'll see how Dreamass does, and then he like walls himself up. Like, all right, well, that's something.
At least they still have fragging the powers to be able to win that pistol. But that said, actually no, they didn't win the pistol. That said, we get into exactly. So we get into the second half. At least we're seeing players that are able to frag out, and actually that brings me the question that I wanted to ask you, Neekz. So now that you have Dreamass joining this roster, they had like 1 to 3 weeks so far being able to play together. And what's been overshadowing Team Liquid going into stage 2 was like, especially with Sliggy gone, is like, what's the direction of Team Liquid right now? Do they actually look good? Do they actually need an IGL? It felt like they needed somebody for like the mid-round calls into the late calls, and now most recently, apparently Scream's the one that's IGLing for the team right now instead of being Yumpy, and they're able to put up these victories against, unfortunately, a shaky Mech. But is this good enough for Team Liquid right now to be a dark horse and potentially qualify into Copenhagen?
Like, these guys, all that they look at is number 1, but that's the expectation everyone has on them. And with the way that the roster is planned out, you wouldn't expect it, like, to get to Copenhagen. You don't expect it. They're a dark horse. Not many teams go in with a good. If they start off with a good honeymoon period, it can. I don't know what way to describe it. It could be the best thing in the world for them or the worst thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just they changed. They needed a bit of freshness. Like, they were a bit different with their comps before with Sliggy. Like, I liked their comps. I liked the theory behind their comps. Like, they brought in the Brim and Omen before, and it's play strong on the wings. But it's what type are they going through another role play issue again? Like, are people on the characters the right? Do we have the right positions for everywhere, or do we just expect everyone to adapt to it straight away.
Yeah.
You know, I almost hope that they do succeed, and I hope that Sliggy finds another team soon. I say that because I know he wants to, like, continue on coaching, and I hope they both succeed because I wanted to prove the point, similar to Eccles. I know he's kind of been floating around looking for a team. He hasn't really found that home since leaving Liquid, but it's the same point then. It's the same point for Link that with a team like Liquid, I don't think it's ever going to be a case that Sliggy was wrong. Even if Liquid succeed, even if they have a new face in a direction that, you know, Sliggy wasn't happy to go down and they can succeed, well, I guarantee Sliggy's way with the right team will succeed as well. And it's something I think that the wider audience fails to understand a lot of the time because they almost come into these stories going like, who's wrong? You know, who's the fucking loser here, all right? But the reality is like, sometimes it's just a clash of views, a clash of perspectives that, you know, the only way to solve them, unfortunately, is to work on them, get them to the best iteration, and fucking get on a server and go head to head. Because other than that, you know, it's sitting there if ands and buts all day long. So I hope Liquid do well, but I agree with Neekz. I think that they've looked kind of good so far. They've had a good face. They're still kind of feeling it out. And either they're going to come through to playoffs and they're going to have it figured out and boom, they're going to be dominating, or this pressure of having back-to-back games, very little time to adjust and not that much to fall back on because of the limited time together, that will just crumble them. So one of those two things is going to happen, and I'm not confident it's going to be Liquid coming out swinging from the get-go, especially as they have to beat Fnatic, and then if they lose, or FPX, sorry, they go to lower bracket if they lose, or then they go on to face Fnatic, which, you know, it's not an easy game. Not an easy game at all.
Yeah. And even then, even if I'm looking at it from an outside in, it almost feels like it's almost like a TSM in North America where, you know, Yampi's played a duelist at some point. Scream's always playing a duelist. Nivera came in as a Jet at some point. Soulcast was playing Raze as Fish 123 before they came into this roster. So overall, it's just like not necessarily an identity crisis because when they had the opportunity to play in Reykjavik, they actually looked pretty okay too. So like the potential is there, right? So that's
I think Soulcast has proven himself to be one of, if not the most flexible players in just at all. Because this dude came through, was not very good, became like the best guy, basically made a case single-handedly for like, yo, this is a duelist, guys. Like, hell, if there's ever a hard nerf to an agent that this guy picks up right afterwards, I know why. Like, he's done so well. The likes of his Neon has even looked okay at times. He's pulling out his Fade, his Astra. He's swapping roles constantly and then almost spearheading that role in terms of
dream flexibility
compared to the others. Exactly. And that alone saved his spot on this team countless times. It's not the fact that he is so good, but it's that he's so good and then that good at so many different things. It's like in a game like Valorant, Soulcast is the player you want on your team because even if he is not the best choice for right now, even if there's a better fucking Breach player in the Breach meta or whatever, 6 months from now, he will probably be a better choice. He will be more flexible than most of the players you would pick up now and will have more results down the line. So I think he's a huge guy to keep for Liquid. And you talk about the identity crisis, I think he's one of the main things, you know, fighting against that because this team will never be shoehorned into, yo, let's play 5 duelists and see how it goes, guys. Because you've got Soulcast out there, like, I can do a half duelist of a Sky, maybe, like, you know, make it a little more flexible. And I like that. Or in that case, he'd probably whip out the Astra, I suppose, and be like, I'll just smoke for you, Scream. You go push them. They're Gravweld. But I want Liquid to do well. But I think right now, the key thing for me going into playoffs is that you have Guild and you have Fnatic, and those two teams are a league above everybody else. And so I'm basically saying, do I think Liquid are going to be number 3? No, not above Acend, not above FPX.
So we talk about like a Liquid that is a dark horse, a Liquid that has potential. I think another team that had that potential going into stage 2 was FOKUS, when you had so many close games and in the beginning of the weeks, almost squeaks by a couple of wins here and there, almost upset victories too. I even think against Fnatic. But now, this was one of those games where finally they could pull out a win. But, you know, it wasn't an easy one, but they finally got it. But what's your take, Neekz, on the potential that FOKUS has currently in potentially in the future?
Well, they were known for their fracture qualifying for this. I was always interested to see, because Yugi was playing Neon, and he hasn't been playing Valorant as long as the rest of the guys. I think he's only been playing Valorant maybe a year. I'm just gonna say a year, because he swapped very late. But their double dive comp, it'll struggle against some teams. Like, it'll struggle against Fnatic, who will play two Sentinels or 3 Sentinels at a time. You know, they're not afraid to do that, the anti-strat people. So that double dive, it's very hard to deal with, but then you have to hope you have the timing on it.
And then Oglu, unfortunately, they had a victory, I think, at some point that you predicted quite well, Mitch, man, but unfortunately not this time around. It was a game that wasn't really that important for either team, so we'll just leave it the way it is. It's kind of like a Cloud9 versus Sentinels that we had in North America. We could focus on another game. Let's not beat a dead horse, unfortunately, for these the hopes of these two teams going to playoffs.
Let's not lose ourselves in this game.
We definitely won't take our time talking about these games, but I think especially this one right here, because the teams themselves took their time to run the exits, and that's Guild versus Navi here at this point, Mitch, man. But what was going on in this game? Guild, of course, one of the heavy favorites. Actually, maybe not actually after Ascent got their performances versus FPX, but let's talk about that once we get to the playoffs. What's your take on Guild versus Navi?
Yeah, this game was fucking painful, dude. You come into this game and Guild already secured top spot. They don't care about this game. They don't need to worry about it. And right off the bat, you could see that there were definitely a couple of changes. For example, our boy Leo, always being a huge breach. Great Sova, pulled out a little bit of KO recently. He was on Arena. That's interesting. Not a throw pick on this map in particular, but for Guild, it was a throw pick on this map in particular. We highlighted it right at the start, and we're like, oh, yep. We said coming in, you might get a little bit of randomness. You might get a little bit of, Guild feeling funky. And then we saw the Leo and went, it's going to be one of those days, is it? And it was. Navi started on the attack, and I cannot explain to you. Right. If I imagine like the 10th circle of hell, it is Icebox and Navi starting on attack. Those are if Navi pick this map, I'm upset. If Navi's opponent picks the map and Navi choose to start attack, I'm very upset, because it means lock in 45 minutes, motherfucker. This half is going to take a while. It does not matter what Guild have in their mind. Do Guild want to push? Navi don't care. They'll probably just push back the other way and swap around. Like, it was so long. And the thing is about Icebox in general, it is typically a map which is very monotonous. It's, at least in EMEA, it's the same rounds over and over again. It's very slow, defaulty. And a default on some map is like taking a little bit of space and fighting back and forth, right? Using up that little util and checking. You have like put it this way, you have black and white areas on the map, right? Let's imagine the black area somewhere you don't know. The shadow lands, you haven't got information over it. The white area somewhere you control. Then you've got the gray area. Now that's sort of like in the middle, where you're like, we might have it. Maybe I'll whack a little flash in there, or cheekily shift peek it, or something like that, and check if we have the control. The gray area is kind of where the fun of the game typically happens, because both teams are like, I think I can kind of sneak in there and take that control for free. And then, there's 4 people waiting for me, and a fight ensues, and we have action. Icebox is black and fucking white. There is no gray. No one fights for it. They wait 1 minute 30. If there's a peak, maybe they XSET on it. If there's not, though, then we shall wait. The sad thing about this matchup is Guild are a very patient team. You can see how that played out. It was 13-7. It took 46 minutes. No tech pauses. There might have been one for like a minute max, but there was no time. Don't worry, Vance. There was no time taken out of this series. No tech pauses, nothing. It was just nonstop. I'm not going to say the word action, but it was nonstop. It didn't fucking stop. So this match didn't matter, like I said. So obviously we start out 13-7 for Navi. Then we go to the next map, and, well, wouldn't you know? Wouldn't you know? Guild, you're going to show it at 12-11. Because the thing is, Let me tell you the funny thing about this one. You see, Guild won 5 rounds in a row to come back into this and buy us a map 3 when it didn't fucking matter if they won or lost. So then we went to Haven. Woo! Let's get a 3rd map in this one. But let's pray. Let's pray that 3rd map because, you know, again, this series doesn't matter and there was one coming up later in the day. Like, please, all right, this at least the 3rd map will probably be quick, won't it? But guess who started on the attack? Guess who started on the attack?
Yeah, and it came at 13-11. I think the meme of like the Navi hit 10 seconds into a map in CSGO kind of like chimes into like the Valorant these days of Navi. Like the old school Navi. I wouldn't think about the current Navi that we currently know in CS, of course. But that said, focusing and shifting over towards Guild here, Neekz, is it really like the addition and the change of like Coldamenta finding a new home in this team that really propulsed Guild into the success that they currently have, or they've currently found in the stage 2?
I think they've been better since they brought in Coldzera and Russ. Yeah, they've looked solid, but they've always been that team that just never got over the line. Like they always got to like top 6, top 3. Did they get top 3 in one of the seasons? They just never got to the final.
Yeah, never made
close
it
enough.
high enough. I think like 4th or 3rd or something like that.
Yeah, they just they get close to that point and then they fall at the final hurdle. So I think Leo's the best player in the world. Like I don't know what I've watched so much of him play. He's Mr. Consistent. He always drops bombs. He's so good.
let me throw you some stats here. I mean, EMEA this season, Leo is number 7. When you sort by ACS, when you go to KD, he's number 4. When you go to FOKUS, to be honest, when you go to ADR, he's
what? FOKUS?
He's still.
I thought you
still
liked casting.
I don't know, KAST. Fuck that stat. He gets he's top 10 in pretty much every stat. And assist per round was the other thing. The assist per round is the key thing that got me because you rarely see a player. So he's top 7 ACS. He's number 4 for KD. He's number 4 for assist per round. Like this guy is in the top 5 to 10 of pretty much every important statistic that we have here. You know, there's some that are like clutch percentage and stuff, and that's very up and down, depends. You know, sometimes you're just dominating every game like Guild mostly were, so you don't need to clutch that often. I really enjoy watching Leo play. I couldn't agree with you more, Neekz. I think he is one of my favorite players because he's another guy that you could watch a tournament and probably come out of that tournament and have the idea that like, oh yeah, I think he's pretty good. Like I don't remember him being bad, and he did it like he was involved in a lot of games. I remember he got a few this nice kill and this okay one, and yeah. So he's a good player. But then you sit back and look at his contribution to the team, and it might not strike you right away, but again, when you sort of lift the hood up a little bit, you see that he brings 10 times that value to it. So he's not a CNET, he's not a flashy, you know, lunatic that's going to capture the eye of the audience in the same way, if you get me, but he definitely gets the job done.
Yeah. Well,
he's only 18 as well.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
He's only 18. He's crazy. Like, lots of experience at 18. Like,
yeah, so much room to grow.
Superstar already now, and can't imagine what it's going to look like at 22, 23 when you know, he's gonna, even when he's gonna reach his prime at 35, because, you know, at 38 currently myself, I'm still a great gamer, and everybody could fucking still do it, right?
Rank you, fans.
No, that's why I'm just casting, because I fucking suck at video games. Anyways, let's look into the next game though. We had the BBL match versus Big. I think this is another one of those games that wasn't that important, but I think as well for BBL, what I do like the storyline behind this team was that when you're looking at all of the, you know, the hype around Turkey as a region overall, and then we get into like Masters and whatnot last year in Reykjavik, and then they got mentally boomed. It seems as though they're finally finding a little bit more success as a Turkish superstar team right now as BBL.
Yeah, I'm gonna quickly have a look. I don't know if this is gonna be easy for me to find, but I'm gonna try to find the points for LCQ. I see it for North America is very easily published, but I'm not sure about EMEA. And it didn't come up.
They might have a
immediately,
chance.
So I'm
Then.
gonna give up. But yeah, I'm not too sure. I don't remember it being a heavy narrative. I can't quite remember what was said in the desk, but I remember for this game in particular, it was like if Big win, it fucking ruined Mech. every Mech fan was watching this praying for big, because at this point, this is one of the last games to be played. It's 2-3 Mech, 2-3 BBL, 2-3 Navi, and 1-3 Big. Big were the only team to beat Mech out of those teams that are in the tie. Mech beat BBL, they beat Navi, but the week after they played Big and they lost. And that win meant that Big could snipe the spot if they won against BBL. If they won this game, they're through. If BBL win, again, I'm not certain. And the thing is, even if right now I could tell you, oh, BBL don't have enough points for LCQ, GG. That's not actually true, because what if another team says, fuck it, I'm out of here. You know, disbands or whatever, can't make the event, gets sick, yada, yada. There's so many different things. And you might be called on, you know, a team Liquid. Imagine Liquid out of disbanded before Masters and all said, yeah, fuck all you guys, I'm not playing with you anymore. And then boom, you know, hey, you guys want to come play Masters? Be a little bit awkward. So yeah, this is still a game that, you know, obviously BBL would want to win for the points, but in terms of the direct impact, it was either like BBL win and no one gives a shit and Mech make it through and everything stays the same, or Big win and it's a huge upset. But yeah, BBL were they were favorites coming into that. They've looked pretty good over the last couple weeks, and I think the guild game, you know, it was 2-0. Yeah, there it is. It was incredibly 14-12. I knew it was a close one. 14-12 on Bind, 13-10 on Acend. That was an incredibly close series. So coming hot off that game against Guild, we knew that BBL were in a good spot and they took the win. But so this pretty much cemented the groups to be like that as they were starting out. I'm pretty sure FPX might have been above Acend. That would be the only thing that would be different, I think.
Well, at least now we could hop into the last series of that weekend, which is the Fnatic and G2 esports. I think again, it didn't matter what happened to Fnatic if they won or lost. I think they still secured at least the playoffs and the first in the seed. But I still kind of like this matchup. I still like what G2 kind of brought to the plate. I still like that Mixwell. At least once we get to the second map on Split, it's still able to pop off and have some great moments with the Chamber. But this map in itself, I don't really get why or how G2 was able to let Fnatic diffuse 3 times on like retakes when they have like utils and all that shit. It was pretty insane.
Yeah, this was a wild game. So I'll say, coming into this day, we knew both teams not really caring that much, and for Fnatic, you know, they were being pretty consistent about their play. I think the first 7 rounds, they just went A again and again and again and again, just kept taking that control. Yeah. And I like the idea, you know, it's a game that doesn't matter, have some fun. And that's very much what it's about. It was just a day of having fun, dueling about. And this game kind of struck me as, it felt more like
the whimsy,
like a scrim. Yeah, if you look at Fnatic playing that week and any other week, it's a different team. It's a team that's much more relaxed and out there to kind of frag and have fun. The other thing is, it was Enzo's birthday, so he had the birthday buff in full effect. And after that first map, Alphayer was 23, 11, and 4. Enzo, 22, 5, and 8. He was right behind him. Right, and he died less than half the amount of time. What a beautiful man.
You know what? Yes, a great combination from these two players too. I was watching this game this morning too before it went live, and every time we actually have a full picture of Alphayer, I was like, bro, this look at him. He looks exactly like fucking Sabrosa. Don't you think he looks like Sabrosa? He looks like fucking Sabrosa, dude. But nonetheless, yeah, man. This guy's been fucking insane. And you know, you talked about the number of times that Fnatic hit the A site like 7 times in a row. But what I kind of did like about Fnatic's hit against G2 on the A site was that there's always like a little variation like every single type of hits. So for example, the pistol round, poison orb onto the rafters, they hit the site. The second round, we actually go towards mid side for the poison orb there, and we have the same sage wall on that left side of the site, and we're funneling utility to actually clear out the right side. And then the third time is just like, oh, well, it's going to be something a little more different, a little bit of variation here and there that always like have G2 thinking that a hit was going to come eventually towards the site. And then once I think Ovova was able to get a Viper's Pit, they throw the same recon dart for conditioning, but they're like, fuck it, we're going to go B. And then it just throws it for a loop. I'm still surprised that G2 was still able to make this a very, very close first half, though, despite how Fnatic looked pretty good on their site takes and the contact plays that they had from Alphayer. So what's your take so far, Neekz, about G2? Do you think, because everybody talks about these roster changes and shit like that too. But I still think that G2 is a very good contender in the EMEA.
I agree. I don't think they really need to do much with their roster, to be honest. I think it's they have a good mix of everybody. They have the roles look right. It's just not going right at the moment. But that will, well, you'd hope it will just get better as it goes forward. Some teams need a bit of disappointment before they can get better, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
I think I'm with you there. I like you look at the pieces of G2 and it's just not a piece that you would remove from this puzzle. The reality is they've been in a weird spot of again finding their own identity with those like weird comp changes that we saw with like Mixwell swapping roles, giving Hoodie the duelist. And again, you know, there's certainly an argument for Hoodie to do that, but it was not a look that looked good for G2. A couple of failed experiments like that. And then, yeah, they show up well in this game versus Fnatic. I think that proves what we already knew. Nuke, you can shoot people. Mixwell can shoot people. Meadow, pretty all right at shooting people. And it carries through for the rest of the roster. I think that, you know, going into a sort of scrappy, scrimmy type game, yeah, they can match pound for pound. The problem for me with G2 right now is that they're not refined, not even close to it. They're still figuring themselves out, and they need to find that identity ahead of LCQ if they're going to be there, or ahead of whatever, you know, next year. Because the thing is, I agree this roster doesn't need to change, but pieces within it, how the pieces are used, need to change, not the pieces themselves. And figuring out that identity is something that I think will take a lot of time, but they need it to push up to the next level to hit that tier above them. Because right now, you put like Elimination Game, Fnatic, Guild, I would say Acend, up against them, FPX as well. I think that I would favor all of those teams in a head-to-head. In fact, most of those teams have played G2 and won. So I mean, you know, statistically, yeah, I would favor them. That's a pretty obvious statement. But I just mean you can feel it. They're a league above.
At least what's looking. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Neekz.
I think it's the first time in EMEA that it's not really an upset. There's been no real upsets that teams haven't got through. There's the group of death where G2, one of them was going to miss out, but none of them are upsets. Like these are all the best teams have gone through.
Yeah. And I still even think when you're looking at this roster for G2, like it's still unlucky that they had to play against Fnatic, right? That's been like hot ever since Alphayear and Enzo joined the team. But if you're looking at the composition itself or how the meta was kind of shifting, like we already know how good Nuke could be on that Raze and how good he is on Raze, period. And how now that you have you know, Mixwell in the past 2 weeks go back to a chamber where he was trying to fight to get a duelist role as a Jet in the past, that fits his playstyle as well. So I think in those two, step 1, step 2, it kind of looks good. But when you have to play a map like Fnatic on Bind, that shows, for me, after I watched this game, I was like, oh shit, I see the value of Viper in his comp right now. Just because it's the first time that I see so many good Viper snake bites on the offensive side for B site hits for Fnatic that just like pushes G2 back in like elbow or back inside spawn. Very hard for G2 to fight for octagon control as well. And for them to still make it 13-11, it still shows that G2 could still adapt on the fly and still, unfortunately, has one of those opponents that's just very, very hard to beat because Fnatic seems to be unstoppable so far. So yeah, I think G2 looks great, but I think overall Fnatic still looks fucking awesome. Still very difficult to win against Fnatic when you have somebody like Durka that's able to get like a 2K entry with a Sheriff onto Hookah. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see that clip because I think Zilf was observing. So that was, yeah, exactly right here. So unfortunately, one of those moments where these guys are just going to die or like, holy shit, what the fuck happened? So you unfortunately have to wait until Twitter comes out and then Durka says, I got you, observers. Posts out the clip and I'm like, okay, we forgive you, Zilf.
Damn Luke, man.
Look at this. How could you not see that coming, Zilf? What a fucking noob. He's so good. It's unbelievable. Seeing Durka go out with that, it makes me want him to have a headhunter every round and almost nothing else. You know, why are we giving this guy the option to spray? I don't want to see that. I want to see him tapping heads like that all day long. Beautiful.
Of course, Zilva's in the chat, so he knows that we love him. So, dude, I don't know if Bolster just won a game or just had a sauna moment, or doing the sexy time. The what's going on there. I love that Enzo had your face on the frame here, Pitchman, so that there's like a small fist bump. Or should I gotta say, maybe he just punched you in the face when
I think that might be
Fnatic
it.
ended up winning. And yeah, man, my man's Bolster's been hitting a gym. Look at that. Uber would be proud if he'd be watching right now. Look at that V cut, dude. Look at that V cut, man.
God, all right.
I don't have that. I don't have that.
Warn him before we put that up again. Jeez.
I still got it. I posted a picture of like part of my foot, and I thought that I was sexy, but then I get to see Boasters fucking like without a shirt. Holy crap, man!
Oh yeah,
but yeah,
Yinsu better be in the chat now. She's gonna love that. We asking for that photo.
Oh, but yeah, let's get into the playoffs now, because we now have our 3 teams from each group. I think that's the crazy part looking at this from EMEA. I want to know your thoughts, and you as well, Neekz. Or starting with you, because at least in North America, we had 4 teams that make it out of groups, and then you're battling for 2 spots. Now there's only 3 teams per group, and technically, if you're in the upper bracket, you only need to win 1 game pretty much to qualify for Copenhagen. So what's your take on the format here for the playoffs?
So we need to win 1 game. Fnatic need to win 1 game to qualify for.
Correct. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Is that not for the LCQ?
No. So this is the way it works here. I'm just gonna pull it up on my screen as well. Get the playoff bracket. So if Fnatic win their game, they're in the upper final. Same for Guild. And if you lose the upper final, you go straight to the lower final, right? And that means you're automatically top 3. So for Fnatic, winning 1 game means they're top 3. Winning 2 games means they're in the grand final, so they're top 2. So yeah, basically, if Fnatic or Guild win 1 game, they're straight through to Copenhagen. That's Masters booked in for them. For any of the other teams, they'll need to win, I guess, 2 through the upper bracket, or 3 through lower.
Does the final matter then? Like
no, it's seeding.
If it's anything like Copenhagen, you probably are able to escape the groups, just like they're currently doing in North America as well.
Which some teams said was a disadvantage when they were asked.
Yeah, fuck seeding.
I mean, we looked at it on the one hand and said it makes sense that you get to. I mean, like I think we spoke with Angel, and he also even said that like a week before, like getting to stay an extra week at boot camp or whatever is an advantage. But then the downside is that when you come in, you are already in playoffs. You lose 2 games from the tournament start, and you're fucking gone. And how many teams have we seen before need that group stage to really get to grips with? Let's not forget, it's not just, oh, well, I need to warm up my little wrist and get ready to shoot. It's not that. It's that, like, you're playing different regions, different styles, different everything. And now you've got to come in. And also, good luck to you figuring out who you're going to be able to scrim against. In the meantime, people are going to be like, you'll probably get a good bunch of scrims against people in like the group that won't flip over to you. Sometimes you don't know how that's going to look though, so you're just kind of like scrimming European teams, I suppose. That's why obviously we host these events in Europe, so that the other teams get a chance to play with some of the best in the world and scrim. Imagine if we had it in North America. God, EMEA being shambled. It'd be a disadvantage to go to the international event because you'd have to scrim for a month in NA. But yeah, I think that
I was still one.
I think overall, like for EMEA, I'd love to have more teams in. But
yeah,
it also does make sense to me that you kind of want everyone to have the same amount of games on stream. So for NA, they should have more games on stream at a regional stage, so that when they get bombed out of Masters, they've had the same amount of airtime roughly. So it all adds up.
So as we just saw the look at the brackets, and 3 teams were able to make it through to represent EMEA in Copenhagen in Denmark, we actually have predictions coming out too from Tombiz, our fellow Tombiz, that's going through with a Acend and Fnatic and Fun plus Phoenix as our 3 teams to go to Masters. I don't know. Neekz, do you think it's a hot take that Acend could actually overtake Guild at this point after seeing Acend, I guess, in week number 5, getting their shit together pretty much against FPX? Was that the hopium for you as an Acend fan, that I can now believe in Acend making it to Copenhagen?
They have the firepower. Like if they have anyone that can pop off. Like
yeah,
they have Vac, who has literally
had a terrible season and they still got through. Like he hasn't been popping up to the way he is. He is like I don't know. I expect him to be so high. You know, like he's unreal, but he's been underachieving this so far. So yeah, I think Acend should. Yeah, I think they can put a battle in. But I agree, FunPlus, Phoenix, and Fnatic going through.
Yeah.
It would be the most logical thing for me.
Are those the clear favorites for you, Mitch, man? As Fnatic and FunPlus Phoenix pretty much the two locked in, and then good luck battle for third place?
I would say to an extent FPX are in a very good spot. I think that FPX take the third spot for me though. It's between them and Acend. I see Fnatic and Guild taking top 2. I think they've been really good. I can't discredit Guild after the performances that we've seen out of them last couple of weeks. I think the Navi game was, flash in the pan. They've had an easier group overall, so it makes sense that they look dominant. They faced Mech right at the very start when Mech looked arguably the shakiest, but I want to believe for now Guild made them look the shakiest at that point, that this was a solid performance from them as well. I think they make it through. And then either Acend or FPX push it across the line. I don't know which one of those I would say makes it happen, but I think Tom's on some shit thinking Guild don't make it. I don't know. I think they've been too good. I don't think they go out.
Yeah.
I think they make it in the grand finals.
At least it seems that from an EMEA fan's perspective is that if Fnatic and FPX don't qualify, they fell short of that goal, of the expectation that everybody sets on the shoulders of Fnatic and FPX at that point. And anything less than that, you should disband, right, guys? Is that what it is? Is that how it works?
I think we have to be realistic, though. Like, Acend are world champions. You got Masters 3 champions in extenuating circumstances there. You've got Guild, who look better than ever. Fnatic, who look better than ever. FPX, who look quite good right now. And Liquid, who have some questions around them. I'm not confident. I think this schedule is going to be a little bit too grueling for them to keep pace with. Now, you have to think, as I look at the schedule, Liquid's first game is the 17th. If they lose that game, they go to lower round 1, right? So they're then they get a day break. They go back. If they win their game on the 19th, they would get a 5-day break.
5 week, yeah. Or 5 days, sorry.
5 week? Gee, give them a lot of time to prep. I expect new
after
strats.
Masters.
New map. You've qualified for last month's event. Well done. Some sort of pyramid scheme going on. But yeah, this was, I think that for Liquid, looking at that, actually, now they get a little bit more clarification. If they're winning all their games, they win their first game, lose to Fnatic, go down, then it's a lot of games all back to back. I think they're in a better spot, but still a little too shaky for me to put faith in. Mech too shaky to put faith in. Center world champions, they're a fucking fantastic team. They look very good right now. It's a new face. I think they're warming up nicely, and I think MBS and Milan being in the background of this team gives them so much of a leg up over a lot of teams when it comes into this more grueling schedule, or potentially more grueling schedule, depending on how your games line up. So I would put a lot of faith in Acend. I'd put a lot of faith in Fnatic. And I think Guild have looked too good. But then it's also weird to imagine FPX not going. I have to lose one of my children. Either way, it's gonna hurt.
That said, for me, from a biased perspective and a fan of just Valorant, I want the best of the best in in EMEA to go, such as Fnatic. Well, yeah, of course I want the best in North America too. But I do want the Fnatic. I do want the FPX to go. I probably want the Guild or anybody else as a third, like a dark horse like Liquid, to make it through, because I actually do want finally that EMEA is going to bring the best of the best to the international event to see how a team like
we did last year. Every time.
Yeah, exactly. But not during Masters 1, right? Everybody talks about NA winning with an asterisk because OpTic never played an EMEA team throughout the whole bracket. They had to beat Brazil, and Brazil's no tough feat, by the way. First off, hopefully EMEA beats Brazil at this point, but we'll have to wait and see what happens then. We have to see who's going to qualify through. That's going to be happening for the next 2 weekends as well for the EMEA playoffs, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. That's starting on the 17th. With that said, though, Neekz, I want to thank you so much for taking the time once again for hanging out with us today. It's been an awesome pleasure to discuss with you and pick your brain about EMEA. I want to know what's next for you, because, at top of show, we talked about you previously being with Alliance. What's in store for you right now, or what's coming up in the future that you could disclose?
Right now, we're doing the VRL season, finishing it out with OG F4 just until the end of the season. It's nothing
Nice.
after. I knew straight away what it was. It was something for me to practice in. And after that, I'm going back to my real job.
What? What's the real job?
I work in a medical factory as a quality technician. So.
Oh, awesome, man.
Yeah, so
Awesome.
that's what I'll be doing.
Well, hopefully you'll make a comeback as well once you realize that, you know, once the franchising starts and like, fuck, we need somebody like Neekz. And then we'll offer you the bag and you'll make a comeback and then we could see you on future shows and as well on the big stage in the VCTs. But once again, I want to thank you on behalf of Mitch and myself. Big thank you as well to Anderzz and to Preston to hop on here in North America to cover the NA VCTs. Make sure you guys follow us on our socials. It's going to be twitter.com/Valoranting, also youtube.com/Valoranting. If not, you could also catch us on Instagram and here on Twitch at DNPeak. So for Uber, who's not here today, myself, who's taking over as a host, Van Silly, and of course, Mitch Man, we thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Again, same time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, every Tuesday. Peace.